Well, hello there, peeps, guys and gals. Hopefully, y'all doing well. Uh, duh, 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 duh. All right, so this one should work. Should work. Emphasis on this should work. All right, there we go. Looks like we have connection.
We are
All
back
right.
and banging.
I'm sorry?
So we are back and banging.
Yep, we're back in business. So let me go ahead and push some unnecessary things out of the way. Like this connection is unnecessary. It's going to go ahead and push that away. All right. So, hello there, Facebook fans and galore or stuff. Yeah. So, yes. Hello there, Facebook uh, people, fans, friends, family. Uh, Today, I am joined here with Gabe Rust, right? Gabe Rust. Yeah. So today I'm here to join with Gabe Rust, who's a friend who we met in high school. Um, we met in Mr. Bernard's class with computer programming and technology, that class. So that one, is where we met. But yeah, so today we're going to be talking about three main things, which I talked about previously, but Gabe is going to have a dialogue with me about that. So, first off, we're talking about abortion. Secondly, we're going to talk about homosexuality or the LGBTQ community in general. Uh, and then we're going to be talking about the question: is God good, the God of the Bible? Is he good? Is he not? So, we are going to start, however, on the first one. So, Gabe, if you want to introduce yourself personally, you may proceed to do so now, and then we can talk about it.
Hey guys, I'm Gabe. I think Raul did a pretty good job of telling you who I am. I'm just along for the ride, really. Raul's gonna take the lead on this, and I'll have plenty of input to spice things up.
All right, there we go. So, let me go ahead and fix my camera because my camera is retarded. There we go. My camera is much more beautiful now, even though you can't see my face. So, how about, there we go. That's good. So, yes, push that there. There we go. So, first off, abortion, as I said, I take a pro-life position, which is that only in the rare exceptions of the mother of threatening the mother's health may a baby be aborted, may not be aborted, i.e., killed or murdered, because I do take the position that life does begin, excuse me, at conception. I do believe that when a spermatozoa meets with an ovum, half of the genetics of each the mother and the father do combine to create a unique, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? A set of unique
Chromosome,
set of,
DNA.
yeah, there we go, a unique set of DNA that will never be repeated again, and therefore is unique in its own right. And so, as I've said previously, in 19, you know, that, let me rephrase this. So, people who defend abortion have admitted in and of themselves that that abortion does kill babies, that it is actually murder. So, um, just to read a quote again, um, Peter Singer, who's a contemporary philosopher and public abortion advocate, uh, in his book Practical Ethics, writes, and I quote, "It is impossible to give human being a precise meaning. We can use it as equivalent to a member of the human species, Homo sapiens, correction, sorry. Whether a being is a member of a given species is something that can be determined scientifically by an examination of the nature of the chromosomes in the cells of living organisms. In the sense, there is no doubt from the first moments of its existence, an embryo conceived from human sperm and eggs is a human being, unquote. Now, as I've said in my previous video, um, hey Diego, as I said in my previous video, Roe versus Wade was ruled on a misunderstanding of the science of embryology as well as obstetrics, something along those words. But it was ruled on a misconception on the science and the misconception that there was not a consensus on where human life begins. That was actually incorrect. At that time, there was no consensus to whether it was a person, that whether it was morally significant and had um, intrinsic value. There was no consensus at that time in 1973. But what there was a consensus was of when human life actually began, and that actually began at fertilization. There's I believe 15 testimonies from doctors. If you read the actual judiciary report, which I am soon to buy and to read the entire 200-page official Senate report. But continuing on, so Roe versus Wade was ruled on a misconception, because just as what's his word? Just as Bernard Nathanson, who co-founded one of the most influential abortion agents advocacy groups in the world, which is NARA, he once served as medical director for the largest abortion clinic in America. Now, in 1974, he wrote an article for the New England Journal of Medicine in which he states, quote, "There is no longer serious doubt in my mind that human life exists within the womb from the very onset of pregnancy," unquote. Now, some years later, he would reiterate, quote, "There is simply no doubt that even in the early embryo is a human being. All its genetic coding and all of its features are indisputably human. As to being, there's no doubt that it exists, is alive, is self-directed, and is not the same being as his mother, and is therefore a unified whole," unquote. Now, don't miss the significance of these acknowledgments, because prominent defenders of abortion rights publicly admit that abortion kills human beings. They're not saying that abortion is morally defensible because it doesn't kill a distinct human entity. They're admitting that abortion does kill a distinct human entity, but argue it's morally defensible anyway, which I see no point in. Because if murder, do unto others as you would do it on, as you would want done unto you. If you don't want people to murder you, so why do you then go therefore and murder people? It just seems nonchalant. It seems very anti-life, to be honest. What would you have to say about that, Gabe?
I think in this particular instance that the biggest thing when it comes to a pro-life, pro-choice argument is that for the pro-choice argument is that abortion isn't murder because an unborn fetus isn't alive, right? And like you said, it's been scientifically proven or whatever. It's been there's a scientific consensus that that human life begins at fertilization, but the issue that remains after that is at what point does that human life become personhood?
Yeah.
So an entity that is a person that it is morally unjust to end the life of. And
Yep.
my particular stance on that is that, for one, because the actual, whether or not personhood is a very morally driven concept.
Yeah.
It's a very abstract concept. It's not concrete. There's no scientific one goes, says all for personhood. So
True.
I think that it's easy to come to the conclusion, one, is that no human being reserves the right to decide at what point a fetus becomes a person, that it is unjust, that it's unjust kill. And because nobody reserves the right to make that decision, I think as humanity, it is our responsibility to, as a whole, make the decision that at fertilization, that it should be considered a person because we don't have the right to pick a point at any time after that. So literally any time after conception that abortion occurs is potentially a murder. And because of that potential murder, it's unjust. Also, another thing, I had said in the previous live video when I wasn't with you, I commented. I said a bigger question that's posed is not, is an unborn fetus a person? It is, at what point does an unborn fetus become a person? And this is something that a lot of this is an argument that I got directly from Ben Shapiro. He's actually one of my favorite people to watch and listen to when it comes to this kind of thing. I know you mentioned him earlier.
Likewise. Yeah.
And the biggest thing is you can ask somebody the question. You can pose, at what point does an unborn fetus become a person? At what point does it become a human being that you cannot kill? And somebody might throw something at you. They might say, oh, the first heartbeat, the first breath, the brain waves, you know what I mean? Or they might say ability to feel pain. I can tell you right now that there is not a single point along the development of an unborn child that cannot be applied directly to an adult. I'll give you an example. The first breath. What about full adults that can't breathe, or they're not self-breathing, they live off of an oxygen tank, or their lungs work off of a machine? Same thing with the heartbeat. What about people who don't have a heartbeat? What about people who have a pump, a mechanical pump in their chest? That's a thing. Is it okay to kill those people because they're not human beings, because they don't have a heartbeat or they can't breathe? Brainwaves. What about somebody who's in a coma? Or sentience, or consciousness? What about somebody who's been in a coma for 2 days, and for all you know, they might wake up in 9 months, or they might wake up in 5 days. You don't know when they're going to wake up, but they don't have any brainwaves. They're not conscious. Is it now okay to kill them? It's literally any point along the development of a fetus can be directly applied to an adult. And if it is not okay to kill an adult at that time, then I think that I can solidly say that it is not okay to kill an unborn baby at that time.
That's and that view I would certainly concur. I actually have a paper here in front of me, which is titled, let's see, which is titled "The Explanatory Power of Substantive View of Persons," written by Francis J. Beckworth at J.M. Dawson Institute of Church State Studies, Baylor University, Waco, Texas, USA. Now, this is a Christian bioethics journal, but the substance view has been used, I think, for a little over 1,000 years in Christian theology, and they actually based it off of Jewish theology, which that's why Ben Shapiro, being Jewish, would bring that up, because it's something that Judeo-Christian values have in common. That's one of the things, which is a substance view, and I'll explain this right now. So this is what the paper says, and I'll just read a small part of it because it's like 22 pages. So it says, quote, every kind of living organism or substance, including the human being, maintains identity through change, as well as possessing a nature or essence that makes certain activities and functions possible. A substance's inner nature is its ordered structure unity of ultimate capacities. A substance cannot change in its ultimate capacities. That is, it cannot lose its ultimate nature and continue to exist. So consider the following illustration, he writes. A domestic feline, because it has a particular nature, has the ultimate capacity to develop the ability to purr. It may die as a kitten and never develop that ability. Regardless, it is still a feline as long as it exists, because it possesses a particular nature. Even if it never acquires certain functions that by nature it has a capacity to develop. In contrast, a dog is not said to lack something if it cannot purr, for it is by nature not the sort of being that can have the ability to purr. A feline that lacks the ability to purr is still a feline because of its nature. A feline that lacks the ability to purr is still a feline because of its nature. A human being who lacks the ability to think rationally, either because he or she is too young or that person suffers from a disability, is still a human person because of their nature. Consequently, a human being's lack makes sense if and only if that person is an actual human being. Second, the feline remains the same particular feline over time from the moment it comes into existence. Suppose you buy this feline as a kitten and named him Cartman. When you first bring him home and you notice that he is tiny in comparison to his parents and lacks their mental and physical abilities. But over time, Cartman develops these abilities, learns a number of things his parents never learned, sheds his hair and has his claws removed, becomes 10 times larger than he was when he was a kitten. Where was I? Uh, ba, 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 ba. And undergoes significant development of his cellular structure, brain, and cerebral cortex. Yet, this grown up Cartman is identical to the kid Cartman, even though he has gone through significant physical changes. Why? The reason is because living organisms, substances, and maintain identity through change. So, another way to put it to say is that organisms, including human beings, are ontologically prior to their parts, which means that the organism as a whole maintains absolute identity through the time while it grows and it develops and undergoes numerous changes, largely as the result of the organism's nature that directs and informs these changes and their limits. So the organs and the parts of the organism and the role in actualizing the intrinsic basic capacities of the whole acquire their purpose and function because of their roles in maintaining, sustaining, and perfecting the being as a whole. So this is in contrast to a thing that is not ontologically prior to what's the word to its parts, like an automobile, cruise ship, or computer. So just as a sporting event does not subsist through time as a unified whole, or an automobile or ship or computer does not well does not well, it is part rather in the word of J.P. Moreland, quote, a sum of each temporal and spatial part, unquote, called the mereological essentialism, which simply means that it's the parts of a thing are essential to its whole if the object gains or loses a part. So essentially, if if a cat has certain abilities that it lost, right? Has certain abilities that it lost, excuse me, has certain abilities that it lost, we would still call that a cat. If it couldn't purr, if it was a kitten and it didn't have the same mental and physical abilities as its parents, right? And if even if it, just to take those two, we would still call it a feline. So a fetus, which does not have the capabilities of a human adult, physical or mental, you know, doesn't lack certain, I guess you can say, humanistic qualities, doesn't change from the fact that it's in nature, it's a human by nature, therefore making it a person. So just like so essentially, just to quote this paper, something is a person if it has a personal nature. So in other words, something is a person if by nature it has the capacity to develop the ability to think rationally, express emotion, make decisions, etc. So this capacity is something a person has as soon as he or she begins to exist. And since this is a part of his it's
And I
adopted.
I'm sorry, I've gotta interrupt a little there.
Yeah.
There were a couple things that in the beginning that was kind of long, so I was holding it for a while. My
Yeah,
memory's
sorry
not as
about
fresh.
that.
No, it's okay. First off, you were mentioning how you were comparing a fetus being a person with a cat and its ability to purr.
Yeah.
I think that's a great argument that, if a cat doesn't have the ability to purr, that doesn't change the fact that it's a cat. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's a very valid argument in the scenario of of a human being a person. So, like, for instance, somebody might say, a person is somebody who is able to think. They have brainwaves, you know what I mean? And if they don't
Yeah.
have those brainwaves, then they're not a person. And that's something like that. You can't really compare it on the level of a cat purring. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, there goes my
Oh.
phone.
No, it's all good. It's all good. Hey, my phone is about to die. Let me just go. I swear, Marcus. He's like it's adopted. Let me just go get my charger because it's at like 7%. All right.
Haha.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
All right. Yep. Sorry about that.
So,
Phone was dying. So let me just go ahead and wrap this puppy around there. Ooh, this is
so
gonna be a
as
tough
I
one.
was
I'll just
saying,
probably have to hold. Sorry
um,
about that. Go ahead.
a cat having the ability to purr or not doesn't have any particular weight when it comes to, something like a fetus not having brainwaves, not being able to think. Um, but in the end, you could take something similar to a cat or a feline having the ability to purr, and you could say a full-grown adult. I think a full-grown adult is much closer suited to a fetus because it is the same species, same,
Yeah.
uh, um,
Well,
same features. It's the same species, basically. It's the same thing. And there are
true.
adults who do not have the capacity that a lot of fetuses have to think. You know what I mean? There are adults who might go brain dead, or they might be in a coma, or they might have some sort of mental disability. You know what I mean? Like autism or um, Down syndrome, or schizophrenia, other types of personality disorders that directly affect the way they think, and they don't think the same way that other human beings do, but that does not change the fact that they are a human being. I think that everyone
Yeah.
can agree on that, including pro-choicers. So in that
Yeah.
case, saying that a fetus not having the ability to have brainwaves or think is not a valid reason to say that a fetus is not a human life or a person.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that, like I was saying, the whole purring thing wasn't exactly relevant, but it did open a very solid argument in that way.
Yeah. So
Um,
yeah. So
I'm sorry, I'm
may
not
perhaps
done.
yeah. So yeah, as you said,
um,
perhaps it was not the best argument, and and
but
and in a
I,
sense, yeah. I
but
mean, it
it
could
was
have
an
been better.
opening. It was an
Yeah.
opening that I was able to layer on top of, and it was concrete. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you can just like you said, you can
and
replace the
then
cat. So instead of saying that, so let's replace cat with, I guess you can say, an elder person, an
a full-grown
elderly,
adult, an adult
yeah,
human
full
being.
grown adult. Yeah. So we'll put that. So for example, so replacing feline, so something is a person if it has a personal nature. In other words, something is a person if by nature it has the capacity to develop the ability to think rationally, express emotion, make decisions, etc. This capacity is something that a person has as soon as he or she begins to exist, since it is a part of his or her nature. Because humans have a personal nature, humans are persons. As for the fetus, since it is a human, something with a personal nature, it is a person. Just as human adults qualify, what's the word? Just as human adults qualify as being persons simply by being human, so too does a fetus qualify as a person just by being human or being a human life.
And then there was also something at the end of what you were saying previously, about how the capacity to have personhood traits, right, capacity does not necessarily in the moment you have those things or you can do those things. Capacity means that there is potential that you will be able to do those things or can do those things. For instance, here's an example. There might be some sort of math problem in class that you don't know how to do, but at a certain intelligence level, or even just having the brain of a human being, some of the most intelligent brains on the planet. You know what I mean? Even if you don't know how
Yeah.
to do that specific math problem, you are in that math class, you are learning how to do that problem. At that moment, even though you don't know how to do it yet, you have the mental capacity to solve that problem.
Yeah.
It's
All right.
there. It's going to come. And don't don't take that for granted. There are some people who might never get there, but it's possible. And that can actually be applied to fetuses too. They have the capacity to be a person at the moment they are conceived.
All
And
right.
that, I
I
think,
can
is
see where you're
something
coming
that cannot be ignored. If somebody has the capacity to be a person, then it's murder. You're just murdering them early if you kill them. So it's just murder with less steps. So
from.
here's
True.
another thing too, and that thing also plays right into the whole abortion scene too. There are some people who might never have the capacity to solve that math problem. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's somebody who is in a coma and they have the capacity to wake up and be a fully functioning human being again and have their sentience and their consciousness and all that, but that doesn't make it okay to kill them. And the
True.
only way you would end that capacity or potential is by killing them, right? Same thing with a fetus. The only way to prematurely destroy a capacity or potential is to abort the fetus. And when you are killing potential, that is just as bad as killing the thing that it had the potential to be. So
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
killing something that has the potential to be a full-grown human being is just as bad as killing a full-grown human being.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Aristotelian logic. Yeah. It's kind of like what I said, but I just used literal what Aristotle said. Potential and actual. So yeah, on that I think we agree on. We're definitely on the
Yeah,
same page on that.
you used, the fancy philosopher research and I brought it down to earth. I
Yeah,
brought
pretty
I
much.
brought it down to earth for some of us
Yeah.
less less literaturally inclined people.
Yeah. Well, that was definitely good. I grant you that certainly. So yeah, so let's go into the next one. Not the next subject, but the next topic under abortion, which is that liberals tend, or let me rephrase this, pro, no,
Is this about
liberals
the
tend,
slavery thing?
yeah, they tend to use the slavery argument, which is, it's on my property. I can do whatever I want on my property.
Well, yeah,
Therefore,
they're just using the same excuse to murder people that's been used for hundreds of years.
it really is. And so, I explained that to I explained that to a certain person in one in a friendship that have. And she was getting mad because she was saying, you know what, it's my body and I could do what I want, and if it's in my body, I can do what I want with it. And I was like, okay, well, I have a dog, it's in my property, I can do what I want with it. If I kill it, you guys can't stop me. And then she's like, wait a minute, can't kill your dog. It's illegal. You just can't murder. And I was like, well, you can do it with your baby because it's in your body. It's your personal property in a literal sense. So, so why can't I kill a living thing like you can kill a baby, which is a living thing? Why can't I kill a living thing in my property? Not as literal, but my personal property. She's like, that's not how it works. And I was like, yes, it is how it works. Consider this, as I said previously in the live video, um, it's my body. It's in my body. I can kill it if I want to. And then I used, the slavery argument. It's my property. The Negro is in my property. I can kill the Negro if I want to. Simple as that. And then she's actually got frustrated because, I simply pointed out it's a pro-slavery argument. You're arguing for slavery of an unborn child. Like that's every sentient life has the right to what's to
To be
freedom.
free. And
Yeah,
I actually had somebody tell me something about how I don't know if you saw it or not, but I had actually got into an argument. I'm not going to name any names just because I don't want to put anyone on the spot. But I had
yeah.
somebody who was close to me. They asked me. They were basically going along the lines of, it's a free country. You can do whatever you want, and you can, in this country, it's about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they told me that you should be able whatever to do whatever you want, whenever you want, as long as it does not impede the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of others.
Mm-hmm.
And my response to that was, well, abortion does impede the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of others. In fact, abortion abortion impedes the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of 300,000 people a year. More than that. And those 300,000 people a year that abortion um, impedes the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness are those unborn babies. They have potential, as potential human beings, they have potential life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And by the same logic we used earlier, by prematurely ending the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, the potential life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, you are just as much ending the actual life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of that person.
Yep. True.
And yeah, that's what I have to say about that. And then also there's one other thing, and I don't think you mentioned this in your video before. I would like to bring it up.
Yep.
Another big argument is that a woman should not be forced to carry a child for 9 months. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised this didn't get brought up before. And first off, thing I have to say about this is that the argument with this is someone is saying, because I do not want to carry a child for 9 months, it is inconvenient to me for child to carry a child for 9 months, therefore I want to murder it, right? They're literally saying that they want to murder their unborn child for their own convenience. And another
Yeah.
thing too, they might say, something along the line, it's a woman's choice, and people who say that abortion is wrong don't care about women's rights.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this right now.
Yeah.
No, actually, pro-lifers don't care what women do with their body. And you had mentioned something
True.
about this earlier too. You didn't mention it this time. We don't care if you get a tattoo. We don't care if
True.
we don't care what you do. You know what I mean? You do whatever you want, but you don't do whatever you want to the baby's body, because the baby's body is not your body.
Mhm. True.
And by us telling you to leave the baby's body alone, that is not us telling you what to do with your body. That is us telling you not to touch the baby's body, because that is our moral responsibility as the human race, is to stop injustices like that. And
Yeah.
people say too, why do you care? Because as a human being with empathy and a heart, I feel for those 300,000 unborn children that are killed every year, and I think it's wrong. And I'm not going to stand around and watch it happen. And then another thing too, they'll say, uh, you you're just pro-life because you don't care about women's rights. Not true. Like I said, we do care about women's rights. Do whatever you want. And this is what I
Mm.
love to tell them, okay? One in one in every two children are born as female. Scientifically speaking, that is the probability of a child being born female, which means that 50% of children are female. 50% of abortions are female. So
Yeah.
50% of abortions take away women's rights.
Yeah.
They take away
You
the
know,
women's rights from the unborn female babies.
I know it's interesting. Another interesting thing as well, as I didn't say it now, which does remind me, there are a few things I didn't bring up now that I did previously, but one thing that I will bring up is how people will say, I consented to
Oh yeah, you
I
you
had
brought it up earlier.
yeah, I had
I
consensual
I
sex.
consented I consented to sex, but I didn't consent to pregnancy.
Yeah, I was like, that's retarded.
That's the way it works. If you
I,
don't want to get pregnant, keep your fucking legs closed. I'm sorry for the obscenity. I've been a
yeah,
I've been that is the most straightforward way to put it, and I
it
didn't think I
it
would.
really is.
I thought I
It
would get
really is.
this video without any curse words, but that's the simplest way to put it. You don't want to have a child,
Yeah,
don't have sex. Sure, you
yeah.
might
It's
want to have
funny.
sex because you like having sex, but in the end, that's what sex is for. Sex is for making babies. And
Exactly, and it's funny too because people.
when you choose to have sex, you are accepting the risk that you will have a child.
It
Anytime you have even protected because protected there still is a very small chance that you're
Mhm.
choosing to take. And unprotected, there's even higher chance unprotected heterosexual activity that you will have a child. Or, uh, there's other things that you can get from sex without consenting to. Um, you can't just say, I consented to sex, but I didn't consent to STDs and just expect the STDs to magically disappear.
Yeah, that's true. I
Why should
can
you
I
be able why should you be able to say I didn't consent to pregnancy and just make that magically disappear? I've got to
yeah,
say, I
it's
think
it's
killing a baby is a lot worse than getting rid of an STD. And I think it's kind of messed up that you can kill a baby, but you can't get, you know, and that's
yeah.
perfectly fine. But not that that supports the argument at all. I just think that's ironic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very funny because when I said it's retarded, I really did mean it's retarded. Yeah, and not in the sense like it's an ad hominem, like I'm going against someone like you're retarded, you can't do this right. It's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say, in the literal word retarded, as in not working properly. The linear logic of these people are just non-linear. Like they're jumping around, they're jumping past points that you need in order to make a logical argument, and they're just not doing it. And
That's the
so,
thing. If you cannot accept the risk of having a child, do not have sex. If you accept the
yeah,
risk of having a child and you have sex, and because you accepted that risk of having a child when you had sex, as a human being, that is not one of your rights, is to kill that child because you didn't want it. You accepted that risk when you had sex.
yeah,
And
you know,
no, there's going to be plenty, and I'm going to put a stop to it right now, because there's going to be plenty of people out there, well, maybe not, who are going to watch this video or something. Who knows? They might not, and they're going to say, "Well, what about the people who got raped? They didn't consent to sex." You know what I mean?
yeah,
And here's the thing. For one, I still don't think it's justifiable for them to kill a baby either, because the baby didn't rape you,
yeah,
and um, that is a little bit of a gray area, though. I will admit that. Um, but the baby didn't rape you. There is no reason to punish a baby, an unborn baby, for something that somebody else did. And then two, that's not even something that's really up for discussion, because a lot of pro-choicers will use the rape argument as an excuse to justify all abortions, when in fact rape only accounts for less than 2% of abortions performed. So we can
yeah,
have the discussion. So here's what I have to say about rape. We can have the discussion on whether or not rape abortions are oh, also, I'm gonna expand that to 4%, okay? Because there's another 2% that includes medical issues.
Yeah. So
Or the
in all honesty, I just saw I just read a statistic. Yeah, the latest.
it's like 2 to 4%.
So rape is actually it was 1.1% in 2013, but the newer one has it up to 1.9, which I think is fucking crazy. Excuse my language
2%.
again.
Yeah, 2%.
Yeah,
But we're
I
gonna
was
say
like,
4% because I'm declining those numbers for a specific. I'm adding those numbers together for a specific reason. I'm not lumping rape together with medical issues. Um,
okay, so yeah,
so we can talk about basically. I'm just ignoring the 2% of medical issues. We'll put it that way.
all right,
Those are okay. That's my opinion. Those
okay,
are okay. Um, that is a choice that I can understand someone making. Um,
yeah,
here is my response to rape situations. One, I don't think it's okay, but it's not up for discussion. Here's why. We can talk about rape when pro-choicers are willing to admit that the other 96% of abortions are not okay. If they can admit that the other 96% of abortions are unjustifiable, then we can talk about rape. If they can't admit that, then the only reason they are talking about rape is because they are trying to use that 2% of abortions to justify all of them. And it has no logical standing whatsoever. There is nothing you can do to back that up.
You know what? You're absolutely right, and it's actually something you learn in philosophy. 100. It's called the composition fallacy. So essentially, you assume that one part of something has to be applied to all or other parts of it, or the whole must apply to its parts. So often, when something is true for the parts, it does also apply to the whole, or vice versa. But the crucial difference is whether there exists good evidence to show that this is the case, because we observe consistencies in things, our thinking can become biased so that we presume consistency to exist where it does not. So, for example, um, when it comes, women who are raped ought not should but ought to have the option, whether or not so there's still a chance of no abortion, to abort the baby. Therefore, all abortions uh, Therefore, all women should have the choice, ought to have the choice whether or not to abort their baby.
Let me
This
let
is the
me put this in a better let me put this in a better perspective for you. That is not the actual logical fallacy that's used.
really
They don't actually. So that is what I was describing is the way to dismantle that argument. Does that make
okay.
sense? The
Because
argument
I
that is
wasn't.
the logical fallacy tactic that is actually more often used in that scenario is the red herring, which is a distraction.
Oh, yeah,
And so a lot of pro-choicers will use rape as a distraction to distract the pro-lifer in the debate away from the actual topic, which is the morality of killing unborn babies. And if they successfully distract you away from that topic over to rape, you are losing the argument.
yeah. Okay, so then, so in my opinion, so I guess then, because I do understand where you're coming from and I accept it. I do it.
So that's
I
let me
still
just
feel like
wrap
it's a
that,
composition.
let me just wrap that up real quick. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
want to wrap that up a little nicer. Um,
I'll let you wrap it up, and we'll
so,
go to our second subject.
yeah. So basically, what um the way to respond to that, it's a red herring. Okay. So the way to respond to that is to say, that it only accounts for 2% of abortions, and then you bring it back, right? The way to respond to a red herring is to acknowledge it, but bring it back. Acknowledge it as a red herring without directly saying that it's a red herring. Because if you point out that they're using a red herring, they're prob they're probably not going to pay any more attention to the debate. They're completely shut off. There's no point in having the debate anymore. They're probably just going to get upset that you pointed out a logical fallacy that they used.
Mm.
So the thing to do is to tell them that only accounts for 2%. So then you bring it back to the actual topic, which is the morality of killing unborn babies, by saying that can you admit that the 96% are not justified? That brings it back
Yeah.
to the actual topic. And there's a good chance that they will say, well, no, those are okay too. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
you can shut down the rape completely by saying, well, we can talk about, then you're trying to use that as a small margin to justify the whole. And that
Yeah.
usually will end that argument altogether.
Yeah.
So the whole bringing it back to the 96 is actually kind of swerving the red herring and bringing it back to the main topic.
All right. Well, that I can concur with. So, um, that was it, ladies and gentlemen, for the first topic. If you want more, like, comment, and subscribe. No, just joking. We'll definitely go on to our second subject, which is the LGBTQ community. We'll definitely have a discussion whether we agree or disagree, because I'm not sure. Were you listening to me when I was discussing my thoughts on that?
The majority. I think you got a
Uh,
little over halfway through, and then I was like, hey, add me to the feed, and then you ended the video prematurely.
yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to abort it.
I
I
see
was
what you did
waiting for
there.
it. Yeah, I ended it prematurely. I couldn't help it. I went a little liberal in my thinking. So, okay.
All right,
So,
back on topic.
what happened?
I said back on topic.
Yeah, back on topic. My position, what was my position? Oh yeah, I can't believe I don't remember it. My position is that we'll get to homosexuality in a moment, but when it comes to the more popular topic of the LGBTQ community,
There's one thing that we need to take care of right now. We need to create a separation. Okay? We need to create a separation between transgenderism and sexuality. Because if we
this
try
is
to discuss them as one thing, it's going to become a very confusing, heaping mess, and they are actually two very different things.
this is true.
So
Uh,
we need to pick one
all right.
to
This
discuss first.
all right. So if that's the case, let's go with transgender.
Transgenderism,
Transgenderism.
okay.
Yeah, rather than transsexuality. So yeah. All right. I like that. I didn't think about that at all. I probably would have confused the viewers. um, so the definition of transgender is an adjective denoting or relating to a person whose sense of personal identity and gender does not correspond with their birth sex. So, my position on this is on transgenderism, not transsexuality. Transgenderism, in my personal opinion, is not biological in nature, but rather psychological in nature. You are not born transgender, but rather you are either made to feel that way, or you self condition yourself to feel that way. Uh, likely due to likely due to
There's so many things
uh,
it can be. It can be
it,
trauma, it can be mental illness, it can be hype. There are people who
uh,
choose to be transgender just because the people around them want to be transgender. It's just
uh,
the way the
nurture.
gender
There we go. That's
is.
the word. Nature versus nurture. I was trying to look for that word in my mind. I couldn't
Gotcha.
find it. Nurture. Yeah, likely due to the way you're nurtured. Definitely postnatal, obviously, but
Yeah, nobody decides that they want to be something else naturally. That's something that they decide at some
yeah. I
point. That
mean,
is
you're not a
something that
caterpillar. Yeah, it's not like Arnold Schwarzenegger like was like, "I'll be back." Goes to his house, wraps himself in a cocoon. 2 weeks later, comes out as like this uh
it's like Ronda Rousey.
hourglass. Yeah, comes out like, I'm back. Female voice and body. So, but yeah, yeah. So
I
in my
mean, it's as
personal
easy
opinion,
as going to the surgeon.
or that too, yeah. So yeah, so in my opinion, it is a not a mental illness. I don't know if going as that
I
far,
think in a
like
lot of
that.
cases it is.
Uh, this is true, but I
I
like to
think that
dumb it.
on an institutional level, that transgenderism is actually defined as a mental illness. A lot of people
This
are
is
going to hate me for saying that, but on a level it is. something is not right mentally for you to think that you are something that you are not and to expect society to just act like you are.
Yeah, and I don't think you need to be excused for that because you are right. I actually do have the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual, the latest fifth edition, and it does talk about, transgenderism is in the book, but no one talks about it. Gender dysphoria is in the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual for Mental Disorders, fifth edition, but no one talks about it. Some people do talk about it online on Facebook. Oh, gender dysphoria, it's not that bad, and when it is bad, there's always help, but it's unrelated to transgenderism,
I think that it
and
is
that's funny.
okay, so
But
here's my deal with transgenderism, and I think that this should wrap it up nicely. It is a free country, right? You do whatever you want as long as it does not impact on the freedom of others, right?
mm,
So, you want to be a woman by all means. You want to be a man by all means. You want to be a half unicorn, half donkey, be a half unicorn, half donkey by all means. You know, a male to female unicorn, half donkey. All right? You do what you want. You be whatever one of the 72 genders you want, okay? Um, Here's the thing though. It is my personal opinion and it is the scientific and the word spaces me. Biological. It is the scientific and biological standard that there are two genders. Here's why. There are only two possible genders that you can be born. You can be a male or a female, and that depends entirely on the combination of your chromosomes. Right? You are either male or you are female by definition and scientifically. The way your brain develops, the way your body develops naturally, the way your hormones develop. Okay?
mm,
You can even inject, there are, even as a male, you will have hormones that females also have. Like, for instance, estrogen is present in the male body, and
yeah,
testosterone is also present in the female body. It's just that in the female body, estrogen is more prominent, and in the male body, testosterone is more prominent. And the way a lot of transgenderism is performed is that the hormones in the body are altered using supplements. And that is one way that it's done. And then there's also surgery and stuff like that.
yeah,
Um, but at the end of the day, you are either a male or a female because of your chromosome biology. And
yeah,
I think that the other 70 genders or whatever, they're not real genders. They are personalities. They are personalities that you want society to just decide are genders for your own convenience. And if you want to choose to be one of those personalities, sure. But I would hope that for your own health, that you would identify as male or female when you go to the doctor. Because when you go to the doctor for something and they need to know, what gender you are, and your life depends on what gender you are, what good is it going to do to tell them you're a fucking unicorn? You know what I mean?
yeah. This is true. This is true.
So,
Uh,
so,
yeah,
and then here's another thing too is pronouns, right? They want people to accept their pronouns. If somebody is a man to woman and you don't call them by their preferred pronoun, that you are violating their rights as a human being.
mm,
And you know what? I don't give a shit, okay? I don't have to accept anyone's pronouns. I can call anyone I want, whatever the fuck I want, okay? I can go
this
down
is
the
true.
street.
Freedom of speech.
I can go down the street, and if I see a man who's dressing up as a woman and I want to call him a sir or he, I can do that. If I want to walk down the street and I see a man that's dressed up as a man and looks like a man, somebody who is 100% a man, no arguments, no nothing, I can call him a woman if I want, because that's my freedom
True.
as an American citizen, and I should not have to conform to your delusions.
True.
Even if you're
You
not
know,
delusional, even if I am not delusional, I should not have to conform for your own comfort. That is not a right that you have. That is
true.
something that's nice to have, but it is not your right as a human being to be called what you want to be called. It
This is
infringes
true.
on the First Amendment freedom of speech.
This is very true. And I had no problem with
That is my says all ends all view on
yeah,
transgenderism.
I think we have similar views, no lie. I had no problem with the LGBTQ community. I was like, if that's your prerogative, that's your prerogative. I'll accept you for who you are. Just accept me for who I am. And it was always sure. It was mutual. I've always had friends who are either transgender or
Yeah, don't get
homosexual.
me wrong.
Uh,
Don't get me wrong. I've met plenty of LGBTQ people, you know, and I love most of them. They're great people, okay? There's a lot of great people in that crowd, and I don't have anything against them. And I think that they are free to live however they want. The only issue I have is if I am forced to live the way that they want. As long as that isn't an issue, I don't have an issue with it.
okay. All right. Well, yeah. As I said, I had no problem with the LGBT community, especially so transgenders in particular. I had no problem with it until I got to college, and suddenly, I was greeting, hello there, sir, hello there, ma'am, and then someone got offended and said, you should know your pronouns, and suddenly I was surrounded by people, educating me on conformity, like I should conform to saying proper pronouns, or in the case, just use non-binary pronouns like them, theys, grays. I was so confused. But what offended me the most was that they're telling me what I should say and what I should not say. And that is a obvious breach of the First Amendment, which is the freedom to
Well, hey,
speech
it's
and expression.
technically not a breach because they can't force you to do it. Okay,
Oh, this
it's
this
not a
is true. No, I
breach.
mean, like, so let me rephrase it.
What would be a breach of the First Amendment is if there was some sort of bill passed that forced us to.
This is true. So let me rephrase it. Not breach, but like, uh, it felt as if I had lost that.
They were ignoring your First Amendment right. And
Essentially, yeah. And so
it is also your First Amendment right to ignore them.
this is true. This is also true. However, I stayed in that conversation only because curiosity. So ever since then, I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna find out more, and then I found out a lot of, for example, transgender lawsuit, seeks to end to name change restriction law. So, and then Canada has a law. I don't know if you know this. That has a law that if you mispronounce a pronoun or something, it's considered hate speech. I think I thought that was stupid. I was like, what? I was like, you can apologize or not apologize, preferably apologize, but I don't think you should be arrested for hate speech. Um, the worst case, you can get arrested for verbal assault or actual
Well,
assault in
I
Canada.
don't think you can you is hate speech in the US one of the limitations of the First Amendment?
Yes. So like,
It
hate
is.
speech is like when you're calling for active violence. So like when
Okay,
you're saying,
gotcha.
yeah, yeah.
So that's a
So
crock of shit in Canada
it really is, yeah. It's they're crap, yeah. The only thing that makes them good is their maple syrup
then.
and their whiskey. That's it. Sorry, that was funny. So yeah, that's really what it is, and it blew my mind. Uh, but yeah, so definitely a mental disorder. I was watching Voltron. I don't know if you watch Voltron. Um, I was watching the newer series of Voltron, and I don't know if you know any of the characters, but there's this princess, right, who's on the ship, and this another prince called Lotor comes to visit her, and they have a discussion, and she's like, "You're here to kidnap me," and he's like, "No, I'm not here. I'm just here to convince you, to join my cause or whatever." And she said, "Well, you know what? I'll never join your cause. I don't love you. I'll never be in love with you." And he said, "You know what? Look at this daisy you have right next to you. You can call this daisy a rose. Doesn't change the fact that this is a daisy." And then he proceeded to attempt to show her that she still is in love with him, even though she says that she doesn't. And it blew my mind, like, okay, even fictional characters understand. Well, not
That
fictional
goes as
characters,
far
but
back
like,
as that goes as far back as Romeo and Juliet.
yeah.
A rose by any other name would be just as sweet,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
or would smell
Doesn't.
just as sweet.
Yep. The argument for abortion, um uh you know uh you can, even if one of the properties are changed, it doesn't change the fundamental nature. It's still what it is,
Yeah.
you know. So you take out a petal, rose is still a rose, you know. But yeah.
So
Either way.
here's my thing on transgenderism, okay? If someone decides that they want to be transgender, that's on them. Go ahead. You want to be a man, woman, go for it. You do you. It's a free country. You can reach for the stars, do whatever you want. But as long as on a governmental level I am not being forced to conform to that, it's whatever.
Yeah.
On a governmental level, and even for tracking, because the government needs to keep a census on its people. In
Yeah.
terms of that, in officiality, the only available genders should be male and female.
I think I take a more religious perspective on this. I think that's why. I'm a little more like. Uh,
Here's
I'm
my
a little
thing with
more.
that.
So
I like to, I a lot of my morals are religiously based. I grew up
yeah.
from a Christian family. I have a lot of Christian morals, and I think that there's a difference between morals and religion. Okay, and I try to avoid bringing religion into these kinds of things as much as possible because, one, the whole thing that church should be separate from state. So religious beliefs should have nothing to do with law. And however, most religious beliefs are really just about being decent people. And it's those kinds of morals that are passed through society with or without religion that affect law, as well
Yeah.
as the
And then
science and biology that is researched and studied and goes into being male or female.
so on this
But
point, I
it
do agree.
because it is a free country and people have the freedom to practice whatever religion or don't practice any religion, it's up to them if they want to feel like they are another gender.
Yeah.
And
I do.
we have no personal responsibility or right to tell them that they have to feel otherwise.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Yeah. So I think on that sense, I would agree. Even though I'm religiously motivated as well as politically, I do agree with what you're saying, though. I'm not, not gonna lie. I do think that uh, a lot of matters of state ought to be separated from the church because the church sometimes, you know, power corrupts. It's as simple as that. But that's not my point, though. Another point I was gonna make is a lot of politics is just also about religion. Um, the reason I say that is because a lot of politics in France, for example, if we're citing history, a lot of that was religion. Uh, what's it called? That period where everyone was going crazy in France and just killing everyone.
You're talking about
I
the
forgot what it's
French
called.
Revolution?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So yeah, but there was a period of time where there was little decency. A lot of hookers, a lot
Well,
of
you have to keep
drugs.
in mind that France is. I think we should avoid that topic as much as possible, just because France is built on a different government. And I think that this particular topic we should try and keep it relevant within the United States
All right, all right. So
and
then,
just try
in
and
that,
keep it on track that way and in a timely manner.
all right, yeah, all right. I concur there. All right. I have no examples. All of them were other countries.
All right, I think we've covered transgenderism pretty solidly.
I think we
There are,
did. Yeah.
I think we can agree that biologically and scientifically there are two genders. If you want to feel some other way, that's your right. I have no right to tell you to feel any other way, and you have
True.
no right to force me to feel any way for you.
You respect me, I respect you.
And that's the deal with transgenderism. But on a governmental level, there are two genders, male and female.
True. All
So
right. So yeah. So now,
I think we've got that settled. We can move on to homosexuality.
homosexuality it is,
Now
baby.
there's
Just
some
joking.
more things. There's some more separation that needs to occur even in homosexuality. There's things that we need to
Okay.
talk about. We need to talk about gay marriage, governmental benefits. Um, Another thing that's going to cover both homosexuality, and I want to save it for the end, as well um, as transgenderism. This is going to cover both, but I want to save it for the end, and that is discrimination.
Okay.
So, like refusal of service based on a religious belief, if
All
that
right.
makes sense.
No, it
So,
does make sense. Yeah.
I think we should. You can take the lead. I don't know exactly what you had planned on for homosexuality, but I'll let you choose where to start.
Yeah. So I was just gonna start just to simply, because a lot of because a lot of this is based on frequently asked questions that I receive personally.
Yeah.
Because I am a pastor slash philosopher, and so but when I come to the pastoring, not pastoring, I guess so. I just get a lot of questions like, hey, I have a question on homosexuality. Um, are people born gay? That's a question I get sometimes. Say, hey, what do you think about people being born gay? And a question I would usually send back is like, why do you think people are born gay? And they would always say, well, they've always, we found out this gay gene, and and that's the gene that makes you gay. And I was like, all right, well, why do you say that
Is
that
that
gene
a
makes you
gene?
gay?
Wait. Is that a gene or is it a learned behavior though?
No, it's a gene. It's a legitimate gene. Uh, so
But
okay. So
here's my
long
thing.
story short,
I would like to see the scientific backing. There is a gene that exists.
hold on.
And
This way,
two,
yeah,
if
there
that
is a
gene,
gene. Yeah, yeah. So they would say, yeah, that gene makes you gay, and I would say, well, actually, if you don't mind,
well,
would
here's
you like
another
to have
thing
a
too.
discussion about
How would that gene get passed along? Because to pass
hold
along,
on.
don't you have to
I know,
make a
I know,
baby?
I know. Listen to this though. Listen to this. So, yeah, because I had the same thing too. I was like, how is that gonna work? But whatever. So this is what I had to explain to that person. I was like, no, there is no actual gene that makes people gay, or that makes people homosexuals. There is a gene commonly found only in homosexuals or self-proclaimed homosexuals, more in males than are in female. But there is no gene that we know of at the moment that shows conclusively that you're gay, nor is there any genetics that make you gay that we know of at the moment. And to
I would
back
like to
this,
get some input here on that um why I think that gene is prominent in people who are homosexual.
all right,
For one, I think that it's too wide of a margin to really even test, but that's besides the point. Um, and two, um, if somebody has a gay parent who does end up having a child, it's their own child, they're going to pass all their genes along to them. If that person identifies as homosexual and they pass those genes along to the next person, then that person is going to also have that gene that's found frequently in homosexuals. But here's the thing. I don't think that it is the gene that will cause them to end up being homosexual. I think it is they will learn that behavior from the person they got the gene from.
Yeah. So,
So if
go
if
ahead.
uh if there's, if people keep passing along a gene and teaching the next person to be homosexual, I could see how that gene would be prominent in homosexuals, but the gene itself is not causing it.
Yeah. There we go. So yeah. There is no gay gene, as people like to say. Gene
I
that
also
makes you gay.
I also think that homosexuality is not necessarily a learned behavior. I think that it can occur naturally. I think it'll usually occur out of curiosity. And then at some point, when somebody is gay, they make the decision to be gay. Because if
I would
somebody
def.
you're straight, you have to think about what being homosexual is. And that is that you enjoy having sex with the same sex. And that is a decision that someone would make. Someone would be curious about it, they would try it,
True.
and they would end up liking it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you can't be born gay. And here's my thing why is because how can you like something you haven't tried?
Hmm. True.
So that is my thing on that. I think that with gay people, they try something, they like it, and then they decide they make the decision that they liked it and that they're gay. Plain and
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah. So, so yeah. So with respect to me, though, I would say I have more of a scientific argument for this, or just let me rephrase it, just a more philosophical argument for it, which is just simply, that being gay is a choice, well, primarily because it is a postnatal development. Yeah, and because there is no gay gene that causes you to be gay. There's just simply a gene that happens to be in those who are homosexual, more commonly found in those who are homosexual, more males than females. Now, another reason why I say this is because a test was done, I believe, in the 90s or early 2000s in Australia, nationwide test. They got every single twin that was exactly the same DNA wise, and they tested all of them. They did fingers, how are your fingers, how are your eyes, every a lot of detail to to figure out more on the science of same twins who are exactly the same. I forgot the word for it, but um, they also asked, which one of you are gay or homosexual, which one of you are not. If I remember the numbers correctly, I can't remember it. All I know is that the ones who were homosexual were in the 40 percentile range, and the ones who were not was in the 50 percentile range. And the reason that that's significant is because if the premise that there is a gene commonly found in homosexuals that make you gay,
Then two
genetically
twins have
speaking,
the same sexuality.
and they have the same gene, and they both have the same gay gene, y therefore is 40%, the percentage in the 40 percentile range gay, and the ones in the 50 percentile range are not gay. That shows therefore then that there's a gene that does not make that this gay gene does not make you gay, rather it just so happens to be found in those who are gay. And so that's the argument I would have, because that study clearly shows that you're not born gay. And as you said, I agree with you entirely. It is a choice. It's something that you learn. Another thing is that it's definitely the way you're brought up. The reason I say this is because I don't know why. I have a lot of friends who are homosexual. They have a lot of issues. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of issues, a lot of drama. For example, a friend that I got, um, who said, self-proclaimed lesbian from like I think age 13 or something. But I knew her from Kellis. I'm not going to say any names, but I knew her from Kellis. And she actually, she was sexually attracted to boys, and didn't deny that until she was raped in her eighth grade prom. And obviously not saying any names. But then since then, she's been self-proclaimed lesbian, saying that she doesn't like men. Obviously men don't like her. Men are just not for her. Women are. And so I'm like, okay, well then I got bit more in the background. Dad was a distant and abusive father mother was gone, passed away, like 10, never saw her her mother, she had
Long
died
story
before.
short, she was a product of her environment.
True. And the reason I say this is 'cause I got four more cases very similar. All of them, as you said, products of their environment. None of them are like, what's the word I'm looking for? Born that way. They were all natural, attracted to the opposite sex, but then something happened, either emotionally. Obviously, it had to be a very strong emotion, either over time or in a very short period of time, um, where they decided via choice that they were going to be gay. And so that is something that is definitely interesting. And so, you know, one of them actually was didn't actually had a good relationship with the parents. Parents actually loved them a lot, but they were just busy with work. But she felt emotionally distant from them, and I'm gonna wave at this person. And she felt emotionally distant from this person, but from the parents. But after a while, self-identified as a homosexual. So all of this, from my own personal experience, just goes to show that that's what I'm looking for. Being homosexual is not biologically, let me rephrase it, it's not biological, but rather, like transgenderism, is psychological in nature. That's why in 1952, the very first edition, and I have it too here in my study, uh, or my library, next to my study, the first edition of the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual of Mental Disorders, under mental disorders, not illness, so it's a lesser thing, lesser severity. Under mental disorders, under sexual deviation, homosexuality is classified as a mental disorder, not an illness, but a lesser, which is a disorder, because it is a sexual deviation from what should be. Oh my God, I have burp. Sorry about that. So yeah,
I don't
so
think
it's
it's
just like
necessarily I don't think it's necessarily a mental disorder.
no,
I
I
think
would
it
say
really
oh, go ahead. I'm
here's why
sorry.
I think it was classified as a mental disorder before. The reason it was classified as a mental disorder before is because one, there was a lot of religion involved in in the beginning lawmaking and stuff like that. Religion involved everywhere, and it was taboo to be homosexual. And so they just made the assumption that if somebody was homosexual, that they were sick. And I don't think that's the case. I think it is literally just a matter of preference.
So in my position, um, it could be that case. I won't deny it. But I wouldn't be swayed by it only because I did talk with some psychologists, actual professional psychologists, and with some doc. Ah, my hand. Hold on. Ooh, I just got a stingy pain, like an acute pain in my nerves. Ooh, probably from writing too much. I had to study a lot today because it's final weeks in GCC. Uh, but yeah, so so I asked them, because I brought with me the fifth edition of the DSM, and I said, I have a question. Why do you have these under sexual deviation? And what I got was one of two answers. One of them was simply, if it's a deviation from what naturally should be of Homo sapiens, which is, a man has a penis and he puts it inside a vagina, and that's what's natural. If you put your holy stick of life in a garbage disposal, that's kind of a natural. So that's why, it was originally put. But because, what's also interesting? You're right, actually. I agree with you entirely. Um, Religion did play a part in classifying homosexuality as a mental disorder, but progress was being done up into the 60s that actually further confirmed that homosexuality was a sexual deviation under mental disorder like transgenderism, because it wasn't, they didn't believe, just like now today, that you're born that way. You chose to be that way, and the sorry, the reason I say that is because the only reason that homosexuality was, and you can look this up, was taken out of um, of the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Disorders was not because of scientific discovery, but rather a political. So swarm because of the counter revolution, like literally thousands of homosexuals took to the streets and started barricading hospitals. And I saw the video of this of homosexuals, with the just coming out and saying and stopping people from getting medical care because if it, I forgot what their slogan was. It was like, if you think that I'm mental, then might as well act that way. Take me out of the DSM. And they literally stopped people from getting medical attention. And I thought that's incredibly the violent of them, not violent in the sense that they're fighting them, but forcing people not to get medical attention and having to go 20 miles somewhere else where they need medical attention. What if someone was dying and they needed that? 20 minutes is crucial for someone having a heart attack or something like that. My uncle just had a heart attack recently. So it's just like, why? And then another thing was that the organizations that formed with the homosexuality, with the LGBT community when they first started forming in the 60s, and this was actually they put millions of dollars into lobbying legislation that were pro, I guess you could say, pro homosexual, pro transgenderism, or back then pro transvestite. So the only reason I say that homosexuality is a mental disorder is because that's how it was last scientifically classified as, and there's been no further research on it, or more further intensive research on it as it was being done in the 60s, because of political pressure and from the LGBT community and politicians who received special donations from the LGBT community organizations to lobby against the American Medical Association to take out homosexuality from it. And that's just simply appalling to me. It really is, because that's not science. That's not how science is supposed to work. That's not how science ought to work. That's not how science you're being taught to in the schools. But then again, you know, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And this is the world we live in. And so that's the only reason why I would say that homosexuality is a disorder. Because it's not taken out. Sorry. Um, because it's not taken out immediately. They dumb it down from a mental disorder to like a sexual deviance outside of disorder, which is like super low, but they still demanded it to be taken out entirely. And then ever since then, no one really talks about homosexuality being a disorder, just like transvestitism, or transgenderism, because when science was actually being progressed in this, um, they were considered the same. They're both sexual deviation. It's not the fact that they're mental as the type of person, but
Here's
just the
why
fact that it's under sexual deviation.
here's why I think that transgenderism is a mental disorder, and I think that homosexuality is not. Okay, transgenderism is a scenario, where somebody thinks that they are a gender that they are not. And I think that that is delusional, and that there is something wrong with them in the head if they think that they are something that they are not.
So yeah, in the same
Homosexuality,
way,
however, is
okay.
based off of something that somebody decided to do. There is nothing, no one, somebody enjoying to have sex with the same sex does not make them delusional in any way. I don't think there's anything seriously wrong with them mentally on the same level as transgenderism.
So, but you have to remember, you classified transgenderism as mental illness. I'm dumbing it down, saying it's just a simple disorder. So I'm not saying it's an actual illness, like where they need
Oh,
hospitalization.
for the purpose of this conversation, to me, illness and disorder are the same thing. I think that there are certain. So here's my deal with homosexuality. Okay, I don't think that homosexuality itself is a disorder or an illness. However, I think that there are other, and I think that somebody can be perfectly sane and still be homosexual. I do think that there is a high possibility of a previously existing disorder or illness that can lead somebody to becoming homosexual. homosexual. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all
So
good.
if somebody has some sort of like postpartum trauma, that could eventually lead them into being, bi-curious or something, and then they get into it and they end up liking it. Or maybe they have some sort of trust issue or anxiety or something like that that leads them to not trusting the opposite sex, and they end up settling. You know what I mean? There are a lot of reasons for homosexuality. I think the leading cause is a pre-existing disorder or illness that could lead somebody to deciding that they are homosexual. But I don't think that
Okay.
homosexuality itself is an illness or
All right. So
disorder.
yeah. So if I had to mirror what you're saying, I wouldn't go so far as I would go so far as to say, as you said, with transgenderism. On that, we're on the exact same page. The if you think that you're something else that you're not, then you're
You're
simply,
delusional.
you're
Yeah.
delusional. But I think if I were to go far, and I actually don't agree with what I'm about to say, but I'm just saying it just for the sake of the discussion, because I even can poke holes with this argument. But you could possibly, and I'm just saying possibly, not probably, but possibly say something of a similar fashion, which is simply that, that's what I'm looking for, which is simply that, transgenders believe that, there's something that they're not. So it's delusional. I guess you can say homosexuality is something similar. They believe that, that's what I'm looking for. That committing homosexual acts is natural when it's not. You know.
I don't
Uh,
think that I don't think that people who are homosexuality, um, I don't I don't think that people. So here's the difference between what you're saying. With transgenderism, someone is being delusional, matter of fact, they think they are something they are not. What you're hinting on is that with homosexuals is that they believe that they were meant to have sex with somebody that they shouldn't.
yeah, I guess you can.
And I think that
Yeah.
in most cases is probably not the choice, and it really comes down to preference. Either that or it stems out of a pre-existing illness. I don't think that I think that transgenderism can be caused by a previous illness, but I think that transgenderism itself, or the identity
Yeah.
crisis, whatever, is also an illness itself.
Yeah. So as I said, I don't necessarily agree with that what I just said, because I was just attempting to mirror yours, and
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
excuse me, sorry.
It was an interesting view to look from.
Yeah. But as I said, the only reason why I do think that homosexuality is a mental disorder is because there has been no actual continuous progress on this. It all stopped in the 60s.
So before we move on to the next piece of pie, do you think there's anything else we need to discuss in regards to homosexuality and mental illness, and it being a mental illness or not?
No, not really. I had a lot of testimony and observational evidence to show that homosexuality is a choice, like as you said, a sexual preference, which therefore means that you're not born gay, which means that you're simply choosing something
I
that's
think you
unnatural.
provided I think you provided a decent amount to support that in the beginning.
Yeah, I don't think we need to continue.
Okay. Um,
All right.
uh,
So then that leads
unless
us.
you have something else on the docket, the next thing that I would like to discuss is shit. What was it? The next thing that I would like to discuss is gay marriage.
Oh, okay. Yeah. My point on that is very simple. Separation of church and state. As much as I would like to make illegal all unions and marriages, I recently had to accept the fact that there is a separation of church and state, and who wants a horrible marriage? So I would say that there ought not to be
Now,
any.
I have a question for you.
I said go ahead.
By marriage is a religious thing, isn't it?
Yes, marriage is more religious. So
Marriage is the religious companionship of two people.
yeah,
So, by marriage being a government status itself, isn't that involving church with state? Isn't marriage itself part of church? And by marriage being a part of the government, doesn't that violate the rule of separation of church and state?
Hmm.
Now, since I've said that, I'm going to state my view. One, to be honest, I think that um, I don't think there's really any reason. If, like I said, it's a free country, okay? If you want to marry somebody who's the same sex as you, go ahead. You know what I mean? Do whatever you want, okay? But I I don't really they can do it if they want to, free country.
Yeah.
But I don't see any reason for gay people to have an official marriage, assuming they aren't religious. If two
Yeah.
gay people who aren't religious, there's no reason for them to have an official marriage because just as there's no reason for, because, it's a religious companionship. Just like there's
Yeah.
no
So
reason, in the same sense, I don't think there's any reason for a straight couple to have a marriage if they aren't religious.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. So yeah, that's yeah. Like what I was gonna say. So
I
my
think you
my
can
point
have
simply.
I think you can have a companionship without having a marriage. You can
So yeah.
dedicate life to somebody without being married.
So
So,
so yeah. So as you know, there is a difference between religious marriage and civil union. Civil union is the certificate you sign before the state or a representative of the state, which declares you are now legally in a civil union with each other.
a
But you have to go to the
companionship.
church in order to get a traditional marriage. I'm simply opposing homosexuals having the marriage, but I have no opposition to the civil union, only for the fact that I was watching something, and they were talking about why
Here's
would you have a
I'm
marriage.
going to stop you right there. Why do you have an issue with gay people having a religious marriage?
Only from the religious aspect. I do think that it is sinful from my religious point of view, and because of that, I don't think that they
So,
should get married.
and I'm getting a little bit into the religious side here. Um,
No, go ahead. It's
what
fine.
religion would you say that you align most with? Christianity?
Yeah.
Okay. Christianity, a very basic principle is to love your neighbor.
Yep.
Sinners should be forgiven, right? Okay, now, do you think it is along the lines of your religion, you as a Christian, to deny somebody who is a sinner or does not follow a specific part of your religion from participating in your religion? Do you think it is
I'm
a
sorry.
very Christian thing to deny somebody the right to participate in Christianity?
Oh, hold on. Say that one more time. I'm a little confused.
Do
Sorry.
you think that it is a very Christian thing to do to deny somebody else the right to participate in Christianity?
I would say that they would have the right to participate in Christianity.
And marriage is part of that.
Not necessarily marriage. I would
But
say
at the
more
same
like,
time, marriage of two gay people does go against directly against Christianity.
yeah.
Now, here's another thing too. If the government bans the marriage of two gay people because it goes against the heterosexual marriage that's involved in a religion, isn't that impeding on gay people's First Amendment right to practice any religion they wish? By refusing somebody marriage, you're refusing them their religion.
Hmm.
So it's unconstitutional to refuse two gay people access to marriage.
I like this. I did not think about that at all. All right.
You might not be happy about the idea of two gay people getting married
Yeah.
because it goes against your religion, but that is their constitutional right, is to
This is
practice that
true.
religion, and marriage is part of practicing that religion. Even if it does not align directly with your views, it is their legal right and constitutional right to practice whatever religion they choose. They can make up their own religion and practice it. They can decide
This
that
this
they're
is
made up. they can decide that in their made-up religion, gay marriage is okay.
This is true. So long as it's not marriage in Christendom. That's what I'm getting at. As Fernando said in the comment, they can still get married even though they're homosexual. And I'm adding this final premise: so long as it's not within Christendom, they can have a civil union in the eyes of the government, because as you said, if they're of the same religion, you know, um, then and they want to get married, then I would be technically infringing on their constitutional right for the freedom of was it the freedom of religion, as you said. But if they are part of Christendom and they are gay and they would like to have a marriage within Christendom, then they ought to know, that Leviticus specifically condemns homosexual, acts and homosexuality
But
in generality.
here's the thing, separation of church and state. So when it comes to
Separation of church.
something
Yeah,
like
oh, yeah. Hold on,
can't
hold
you
on. I'm
can't
hold on, hold on. I
I'm
know I'm
gonna
getting
stop you
somewhere
right.
here.
I know I'm gonna stop you right now because you can't use
Okay.
Bible verses as an argument against the legality
No,
of gay
no, no.
marriage because
Hold
of
on. No, no,
separation of
no.
church and state.
I'm not using it for argument for political thing. And I didn't quote any verses. I just simply referenced the chapter in the Bible which condemns it. But what I'm saying is that if they are truly a part of Christendom, then they would know that Christianity in itself, Judeo-Christian values do not accept
Hey, real quick, I don't mean to interrupt.
homosexual marriage.
I'm not able to see who's watching. Who's watching right now?
There are like 3 or 5 people who are watching.
Okay, because I only see two people on my little thing. It just says the number two, and
So,
that's all I can see.
so do I. I think there are only 2 people talking. Hey, 4 I stopped. Oh, that was funny. Oh, Fernando, I swear.
Is a Natalie Dilbeck talking or
Dilbeck,
watching? I mean,
she has to
yeah.
talk. But hi, Natalie. I miss you.
Is she
No.
watching?
Yeah, I think she is.
Okay, because I got a friend request. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't some random person.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
anyways, here's my do all say all. I think that if two gay people want to get married, that is their constitutional right. And if they want to do that, go ahead. However, I think that the government should stay out of marriage because marriage is a religious thing. Um, sure, civil unions and companionships might be there might be some sort of legal documentation, but marriage itself, government needs to stay out of because it violates the separation of church and state for the government to be involved in marriage. But I do think that anyone is, like I said, it's a free country. Anyone is free to do whatever they want. If a gay person wants to marry another gay person, that's totally fine. And I have no
Yeah.
right to
So,
stop them.
it is.
But the
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
government should stay out of it.
Yeah. So I would say that you are right. On a federal level, it would be separation of church and state, but I wouldn't say so necessarily on the state level. Only because when it comes to the federal, sometimes they do let decisions be made up by the states individually, and that's where I would think because I did find uh, because going back to what you said about so when you were saying that them having marriage, like marriage, religious marriage, were you talking about inside Christendom or just any religion in general outside
Any
Christendom?
religion.
Okay, okay, I
And
thought you were talking about in.
even let's use Christianity as an example.
All
Um,
right.
you might say that it is against Christian, practice or whatever for two gay people to get married. However, it is a gay person's constitutional right to practice Christianity. Even if their
Sure.
sexuality goes against their religion, is their constitutional right to practice that religion. If a gay person wants to be Christian, they can be Christian. In fact, I know plenty of gay Christians. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I know that might sound kind of weird to you, but that's a thing.
No,
And
I know. No, I know it's a thing. I've
and
had discussions with them.
do you know what the actual Christian response to that is?
Tell me.
If somebody at some point chooses to be gay or whatever, it is still the Christian response to accept that person into the community because it is
I accept it.
literally a part of the Christian religion to accept them. and, to
It is.
love your neighbor and this and this and that. And refusing to accept gay people into your religion goes against the Christian cause itself.
This is true. This is true. But when it comes to marriage within Christendom, it can be a little bit more difficult. Only because now we're getting into theology.
I
Now we're
think
getting out
that,
of the politics and we're getting into
like I said,
theology.
that I think the government has no say in whether or not a gay person can get married. That is completely their choice. Okay. I do think, however, that the government should also have no say in whether or not a specific church has to perform a gay wedding. I do not think that a Christian church should be forced to perform the wedding of a gay couple because that is infringing on the church's First Amendment right, freedom of religion. And if, them performing a gay marriage goes against their religion, the state cannot force them to do it. And if that gay
Yes.
couple wants to get married, I'm sorry, the government's not stopping you from getting married. The church is choosing not to. If you want to get
True.
married, go find another church. Do a
True.
courthouse marriage. Do a
Yep.
arrange your own marriage. Figure it
Yeah.
out.
This is yeah.
But
This
you
is why I
cannot
said,
force.
I'm opposed to marriages, but not civil unions. I would be opposed to marriages, and obviously within Christendom because it's religious in nature. But if you're going outside your religion, that's outside your religion. Uh, and if it's a civil union, that's for the state. That's nothing to do with Christianity. So that would be my point of view. All right.
Another thing.
Yeah.
How do you feel about and this is the last thing I wanted to talk about in regards to gay marriage.
All right. Yeah.
Assuming that the government's involved in marriage, um, there are often tax benefits and financial benefits, welfare benefits, stuff like that, um, governmentally speaking, for married couples. I think that marriage is incentivized by the government. Um, do you think that gay married couples should be incentivized by the government the same way that straight married couples should?
I wouldn't say so. At prima facie, I would say no, simply because the whole point of the incentivization is for procreation, just for the fact that they can produce future citizens, and therefore grow the country. And when you grow the country, when you grow the population of the country, just you grow the amount of workers that could be in the future, and in doing so, grow the amount of consumers and then employers, and then it benefits the country as a whole economically because then you have more soldiers who can fight. You have, it's a lot of economics and military wise. That would be for marriage in itself because marriages, especially if you're talking about Catholicism, they're like freaking rabbits, man. 6, 7 children, and they get incentivized for having each kid and for being married in the first place. But when it comes to homosexual children, you know, uh, homosexual children, my bad. When it comes to homosexual marriages, I would say that they should not be necessarily incentivized because I wouldn't understand why they would be incentivized for, you know, um, if they're going to adopt, then okay, then yeah, give them the tax benefit for the child. But I wouldn't say give them the tax benefit for the marriage in and of itself because there is no procreation being done.
So I agree with most of that. Um, like I said, government should stay out of marriage, but that's a different topic. Um,
Mhm.
I do, a lot of this depends on whether or not uh, it's based on a decision on whether or not the government should incentivize a marriage at all.
Yeah.
So should the government incentivize a straight couple, like let's just ignore the gay couples altogether, should the government incentivize a straight couple for um, being married just because there is a possibility that they will produce the next generation?
I would say yeah, just because there is a possibility that
So on
they
that
can
case,
be.
I would think that for that particular reason, um, I I am I would say I'm on the same level as you. I would say that um, straight couples should be incentivized for the possibility of producing children, but homosexual couples should not be incentivized. However, I think that upon adoption of a child, that um, that a gay couple should be incentivized or they should get a benefit in some way for raising a child because that, to be honest, that is an issue is that there are even children that don't have anyone to raise them.
Yeah.
It's not very often, and you know, an argument that's going to get thrown out there a lot, and I'm surprised we didn't talk about this during the abortion section of this video, but
Yeah.
something that's thrown out there a lot is the foster system. And there are a lot of foster children that could be taken care
This
of
is
by a
true.
gay couple. And it would take
Yeah.
care of a lot of government funds if they let gay couples adopt children from the foster care.
Yeah. And
However,
as I
the
said,
issue with that the only issue with that is that most of the children in the foster care, I would say, I don't remember the statistics last time because I'm sure you remember that really long post I made about the statistics with foster care.
yeah.
um, how many did I say? 55% of children in foster care? 55% of children in foster care are just waiting to go home, and they're there for
Wow.
less than 2 years. Um, but um, I do think that adoption should be incentivized for gay couples, but they shouldn't be incentivized on the same level if they don't have any children as a married couple that don't have any children. To be honest,
Yeah.
though, that's based entirely on the idea that potential childbirth would be incentivized.
Yeah.
I personally think that it might be better that potential childbirth wouldn't be incentivized. And then that way, a gay couple and a straight couple would get incentivized the same way when they actually have a child. A straight couple
Yeah.
would get incentivized when they actually have a child, and a gay couple would get incentivized when they actually adopt a child. And that would
Hmm.
be the most fair. But at the same time, if they chose to incentivize for the actual possibility of having a child, I would imagine that straight couples should be incentivized more than gay couples simply because um, they can actually produce a child.
All right. So yeah. So we're on a similar page. Marriages ought to be
We're
incentivized,
we're
but
literally we're literally on the exact same page.
yeah. I would definitely. Yeah. Perfect. So we wrapped. I think you wrapped it up quite nicely. Um, are we? Do you have anything else on homosexuality before we go to the last topic?
Yes. One more thing.
Okay.
Should should the government be able to force a business owner to serve um, customers on the basis of discrimination? So you've got situations where where the cake shop owner got sued because he refused to make a wedding cake for a gay couple. It was a Christian business owner. He refused to make the cake. Or say a Christian church refuses to um, arrange the marriage of two gay people. Should they be punished or forced to carry out that service?
Um, I would say when it comes to racial or sexual discrimination, then some punishment ought to be necessary, only because that's unnecessary discrimination. However, if it comes to religion, that's a little bit more of a tricky part because then people have certain core beliefs that if they don't accept homosexuality as an ideology or just as just the idea of it, and then they wouldn't want to what's the word I'm saying? Then they would not want to perform a service for said ideology, which would be homosexuality in this instance. So I would say no punishment would be necessary for that. I don't know. I don't remember how that ended up. I never followed that news on that, so I don't know how it ended up. But what I would say is that I would say that they're just expressing their freedom of not expression, freedom of religion. You know, they in their religion, homosexuality is condemned, but as a human being, they're accepted. So because it is, they are looking for a wedding cake specifically for a homosexual wedding. I would say I would understand entirely why they denied to perform that service, but hopefully they would have offered referrals. Like, I'm sorry, we don't serve uh, cakes for homosexual weddings, but we can refer you to one of our sister stores nearby or something. That I can understand because you're being respectful to
Yeah,
the other person because of your religion. However, you're also being professional because although you are denying them that service, because it is legal, you can. It is quite it's a professional courtesy, to say, even though we're not going to serve you, we do know other places where you can get some, and they're just as good, if not better. If that's something they're willing to admit.
that's the
So I
thing
would
that
say,
happened with that particular case too. Is the owner of the cake shop actually told them where other shops were where they could get a cake, and they still sued them. And another thing too, so the argument with, yeah, I know, right? The argument
okay,
with the whole discrimination thing is that um, so if you force a business owner to serve a customer, like a gay customer or something like that, the argument is that you're infringing on their First Amendment right to practice their religion. But the on the alternate side is that um, if you refuse to serve a customer because of your religion, that you are discriminating against that person's sexuality or race or whatever.
yeah,
You know what I mean? But um, at the same time, I think that it because it is a free country, I think that any business owner should have the right to serve or deny service to any customer that they wish. And if they choose to deny service to a customer because of their religion, that is their First Amendment right, and they should be able to do so. And I think that that customer should have no problem finding that same service elsewhere. Um, Also, another thing with the cake is that the owner of that shop did not refuse to bake a cake. He refused to make them a cake that had two men standing on top of it. He said, I'll make you a cake.
um,
I'll make you a cake for your gay wedding, but I'm not going to make you a gay wedding cake for your gay wedding because I'm not comfortable doing that because of my Christian origin. You know what I mean? So
okay,
that's the deal with that. I think that it yeah, it might be called discrimination or whatever, but it goes directly against the First Amendment freedom of religion to tell
yeah. I
someone
was gonna
they
say
have
because
to serve a customer because you can't refuse them service because of that, and that's
yeah. I mean, it was if he had made the terms and agreement before the agreement was reached, then why is that person violating the verbal contract that they had between them, that he make them the cake, just not the way they would want it specifically. If he said, yeah, I'll make you the cake, but I'm just not going to make it like that, and then they say, okay, that's a verbal agreement. So then he makes the cake, and then they come back,
well,
and
no,
I don't know what happened, but
he didn't make them a cake at all because they wouldn't accept that.
well, why didn't he just go somewhere else? Like, whatever.
That's
Okay,
the
yeah,
thing. Well, in that
I was gonna
particular
say because this
in
this has happened at Islamic places, like cake shops owned by like Muslims. They've refused, but I've never heard of any legislation, or let me rephrase this, any lawsuits brought against them, or at least none to my knowledge.
well, that was because in this particular case, um, and like I said, I know plenty of gay people. They're great people. There's nothing wrong with them. I think that this particular couple, honestly pissed me off because this particular couple was actually targeting that cake shop, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
Managed to find, I don't remember what state it was. I think it was like Nebraska or something like that. I could be wrong though. I don't remember off the top of my head. I can look it up real quick.
All right.
If you want to talk about looking it up, go ahead.
Um, um, Nothing comes onto my mind right now. Actually, let me go. Let me go refill my water cup, and I will be just back within 2 minutes.
All right.
Gives you time to refill. All right. Apologies. Ow.
You back?
Wow, that hurt. Yep. Sorry about that. Took a bit, but I am back. Were
So
you able to find what?
I did do a quick Google.
Okay.
Um, the it was in Colorado,
Okay.
and it was a huge discrimination case, like a Supreme Court case. And what the owner of the shop said, his name's Jack Phillips, he said that he would serve anybody that comes into his shop. So he doesn't discriminate. He would serve anybody that comes into his shop, but that he wouldn't create cakes for every Mexican.
Okay.
So, um, so creating a gay wedding cake is him pumping a message out of his shop that goes directly against his religion. He didn't refuse service completely to the gay couple. He just said that he wouldn't make that cake for them. But like I said, there were literally hundreds. There's hundreds of cake shops in Colorado, and they intentionally picked the one shop that wasn't run by a gay person You walk into any cake shop, I guarantee you most of them, especially in Colorado, any cake shop you walk into probably isn't being ran by a straight Christian man.
Yeah.
Chances are there's some gay guy running the shop. That's just how it is. And they picked the one shop out of hundreds in Colorado because they were specifically targeting him. They wanted to make headlines and they wanted to basically make a lot of money off of him. They targeted him specifically so that they could sue him. And it's sad to say that they won, but
Yeah.
I think the legal standing right now is that they cannot refuse service for that. And if somebody comes in your shop and they want a gay wedding cake, you have to make them a gay wedding cake. And I think that's constitutionally unjust. It's an infringement on the First Amendment of the Constitution.
Hmm.
That's all I
Interesting. All right.
in regards to in regards to that. And the same thing goes for gay marriage. You can't force the Christian church to host a gay marriage.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, gay people can get married, but you can't force somebody to arrange it.
All right. There you
So that's
go.
all I have left on the topic of transgenderism and homosexuality.
All right. I have nothing else. Um, Brings us therefore to our very last topic, which is about God. So there were three topics I was going to discuss just briefly, which was existence of God, because that's still brought up to me. It was it existence of God. Um, is how do you reckon? So the problem of evil and no, I think that's it. Just really, just the existence of God and the problem of evil was really the two that have been asked for me. Um, so yeah. Did you have anything to say? So first off, we'll start with the existence of God. The God of the Bible. Do you have any opinion or anything you'd like to
My
discuss?
my thing on that is that I don't know. I have no I have no means to say that he doesn't exist. I have no means to say that God does exist. Um,
Yeah.
I will say that I have never seen any concrete proof that there's a God. Um, there's a lot of so-called evidence, but there's no concrete proof.
Yeah.
But I am not 100% closed to the possibility of the existence of a higher power.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna read a page I wrote. It's literally just one page. And it was a friend of mine who will go unnamed. She had actually challenged me and said, you got 5 minutes, prove to me God exists. And I was like, all right. I sat down. In 3 minutes, I failed. I didn't even get to four. So, I said, well, if you can I write it down and do it again another time for just 5 minutes max? And she said, yes. So I wrote this paper down. And this is essentially what I was going to say. So I guess I'll just read it, and if you have any comments, we can discuss it. Does it sound good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'll so first off, let me say that I deny that science. I deny that science can account for everything. I believe that it cannot account for everything. Dr. William Lane Craig explains it wonderfully when he asserts in a debate, quote, I think there is a good number of things that cannot be scientifically proven, but that we're all rational to accept. Let me list five. One, logical and mathematical truths cannot be scientifically proven by science. Science presupposes logic and math, so that to try to prove them by science would be arguing in a circle. Two, medical physical truths like there are other minds than my own, or that the external world is real, or that the past was not created 5 minutes ago with the appearance of age, are rational beliefs that cannot be scientifically proven. Three, Ethical beliefs about statements of value are not accessible by the scientific method. You cannot show by science whether the Nazis, scientists and camps did anything evil as opposed to the scientists and Western democracies. 4. Aesthetic judgments. Um, Aesthetic judgments, number 4, cannot be accessed by the scientific method because the beautiful, like the good, cannot be scientifically proven. And finally, most remarkably, would be science itself. Science cannot be justified by the scientific method. Science is permeated with unprovable assumptions. For example, in the special theory of relativity, the whole theory hinges on the assumption that the speed of light is constant between any 2 points A and B, and that strictly cannot be proven. So none of these beliefs can be scientifically proven, and yet they are accepted by all of us and are rational in doing so, unquote. Therefore, I deny that science can account for everything with sincerity. Now, do not confuse it that I deny that science cannot
I
account for.
I've got to. I'm sorry. I've got to interrupt. I do have something to say about those 5 things. Um, most of those things aren't necessarily beliefs, but actually concepts that were invented by the human race, by the human intelligence, and accepted as standard.
Which is science.
Not necessarily. Those things
Science
were,
is knowledge.
but what you're saying is that you can't prove it with knowledge.
No, so I'm saying that.
What
So
I'm
in
saying
here,
is
I'm
stuff like logic, mathematics, the scientific method, all of these things are all concepts.
yeah.
They are abstract concepts that were invented by the human intelligence and were accepted as standard in the human society.
Now I don't know about that, but I'm not going to contest it because I'm still going to finish reading this. Okay. Sound good?
Like an example, I'm sorry, an example, mathematics.
Okay.
Mathematics didn't create itself. Every form of
No.
mathematics, the number system itself, is something that was invented by the humans, right? We
Yes.
invented concepts of mathematics using logic, and we put it into the form of writing.
Yep.
And that
Because
was
it
something that
is a
was,
universe.
it's universal, and it was because it was invented by humans at an early point in time and was accepted by the human
Wait.
society as a whole
I'm
as
I'm
standard.
sorry. I'm a little
It is
confused on what you mean. Like humans invented the law of gravity,
no, no,
or
no,
we
no,
just
no.
discovered it as
I'm talking about mathematics.
mathematics. Like
No, the number system, the way numbers interact with each other, it was all invented by human intelligence and
ah,
then accepted as a standard.
so it was invented based on a real thing. So it was so
And then
how do I put this?
something like the law of gravity is something that was derived using that standard that was invented.
Okay.
It's not necessarily something that has to be proven because it's something that we invented.
And this was in contention. Was it in contention or just a statement to
Let
what I
me
had
let
said?
me
Yeah.
let me put this into perspective for you. Mathematics in a sense is just a language,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, if you say you invent a new language, right?
Okay.
Don't
You have
you can't explain that language with that language alone, can you?
no. You have to base it on on mathematical principles. Every
Everything,
language,
not necessarily mathematic, but off of another language.
which that in turn is
Either
based on
that,
another
either that,
language.
or it has to
But
be
but you
invented from
understand
scratch.
all languages though are based on mathematical principles. That's a fact in itself,
Not
or at least all
necessarily.
inventions.
It can
Yeah.
be. I think it's a
No,
factor,
no, I think it's
but
the main factor, if not just the sole one. Uh, you know, there are 20, there are 26 alphabets based on how we speak in this, in this side of the world. And then when it comes to China, there are more alphabets, I think like 52 or something like that. It's way too much for my opinion,
yeah.
or like 30. But they have to, they have to base it on something that's abstract, but that's truth, That's logic in order for it to make sense, because we can detect logic, because logic and because truth and logic are something that I wouldn't say that we would necessarily invent, but something that's predisposed within us for us to discover rather than to invent. Because I don't think we would invent science. I think it's just something that we would discover or stumble upon. Because we don't invent the law of gravity. We discover it. We don't find out. We don't how do I
No,
put it? We don't. What would you say that we would?
we didn't discover the law of gravity. We discovered gravity, right? And then we
Yes,
used the mathematics that we knew to invent a law for it, to describe it.
true. So I would argue in the sense that we didn't discover. I would say we did not in. No, I guess you can say we invented math. Yeah, never mind. I just realized. All right, I guess I'm on the same boat. All right,
So
so yeah, so I'll go.
all the things that you mentioned are invented concepts.
Yes. Now, why are you saying that? Is if you don't mind, because is it so? I'm saying I
There's
deny
nothing
that
that
science.
needs to be, you said it's something that cannot be explained with itself, and I'm saying that it doesn't need to be explained because we invented it. It's something that we made a decision to make it standard, and now it's standard.
Science.
Somebody drew the line at some point that this is how we're going to do things, and that's how we did it.
Oh, science cannot be justified by the scientific method. That one.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right then. Yeah. All
When
right. So I'm not.
science cannot be proven with the scientific method because we invented the scientific method. It's something that we made up
True.
in order to explain things from
So in that part,
basically
I
we invented science to explain things that could previously only be explained on a philosophical manner.
yeah. So in that part, I think I would agree with you. Yeah. So continuing on. Therefore, I deny that science can account for everything with sincerity. Do not confuse it that I deny science cannot account for anything. I do not make this claim. I claim that science cannot account for every single thing. Next, I make.
I have to interject there too. I'm sorry.
Like,
I would say that it is beyond our knowledge to make a claim whether science can account for everything or not. And even if science could account for everything, it is beyond our knowledge to use science to account for everything. Does
we're
that
on
make
the same
sense?
page, yeah, bud. Yeah, we're on the same page.
So
Yeah, okay.
it's not that, the universe is so big and the human mind is so small. It can only retain
Yeah,
so much information and do so much work. There is more than, with the amount of brain power that it would take to process something like the universe itself would take millions and millions of years, millions of light years, not light years because that's not time, that's distance, sorry. It would literally take, it would, by the time the human race could understand the entire universe, the human race will probably be extinct
yeah,
naturally.
naturally. Yeah, so all right.
The sun in our solar system would die out before
Yeah,
we applied science to everything. So it is way
probably.
beyond our time to even think about that.
Yeah.
But continue.
Yes. So I have a feeling you're may gonna want to stop me. Eventually, the meteor will finish this. Oh, I like that. I think that's funny, Francisco. That's funny. So yeah,
Something is gonna kill us before we get to any point of scientifically explaining all of the things that you're saying we can't explain. So there's no
yeah.
point even using it as an argument to verify the existence of a higher power.
No, I'm not using
Because
it
we'll
to
never
verify the existence. No, hold on. I'm not.
it's
I
leading
think
up to there. I'm just saying that it's not gonna play as any building piece since it's not, we're never
no.
gonna
I
get
mean,
to
not.
the point
No,
where we
so
can
it's so you have to understand. This was not written for you. It was written to someone who believed that science can account for everything. That's what this entire paper, or at
oh,
least that's what that part was. She believed that science can account for everything, and if it can't be proven by science, it's not real.
Science is nothing more than a sophisticated form of philosophy.
Yeah, and so that's why I wrote this. That's why I took this quote
And
because she did not believe it.
philosophy cannot account for everything. Here is why.
This is true.
Philosophically speaking, when you close the fridge door, does the light turn off?
Yep.
Nope. Philosophically speaking, when you close the fridge door, the light is no longer within your perception. And philosophically speaking, since the light is no longer within your perception, the light ceases to exist.
You need to
The
stop
light,
with your idealism.
no, I'm serious. So
No, I
science
know.
is
I know.
more than an advanced form of philosophy. Realistically speaking, though, the light still exists and the light turns off.
Yeah.
But
So,
perceptively speaking, the light ceases to exist. Just like there's
true.
so many things out in the universe that we cannot perceive. And because there's so many things that we cannot perceive, we cannot make any assumptions.
Um, so I'm gonna continue now. Uh, so next I make these 5 claims, and I have a feeling you're gonna stop me on each one. So I guess we'll have a productive conversation. Uh, just an FYI, these are simplified arguments. Not all the premises are actually even in there. So if you want to stop me and ask for more clarity, I'll give you the premises of each argument if you want to do that. And so that way you have more understanding for it. All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So first off, I believe that God is the best explanation for the beginning of the universe. Since the time of Plato and for the good past 3,000 years, all atheistic and materialistic scientists asserted and defended that claim that the universe was eternal. But in 1917, Einstein's E equals mc squared implied a universe with a beginning, and in 1998, it was finally confirmed that there was a vast background radiation in the universe. That, as we now know, being the remnant from the Big Bang. Uh, and the Big Banger is God, so to speak. So that would be the first one. And mind you, this
So
is
God is
very
your
simple.
assumption.
In a sense, this is
Assumption
a
based on you not knowing.
not necessarily. It's a very complicated. So
As
in
a
honesty,
as a
it's
society, yes, but there is no scientific way to prove what caused the Big Bang, right?
no, but you
So
can logically deduce it.
because it can't be scientifically proven, the common assumption drawn is that God caused it.
Yes and no. So like the common is so the common distinction to say that God caused it just comes from from the quote sensus divinus or divinus sensus, which is this the sense of the divine that all men are born with. That every man has a sense that there is a higher power, and that is because, as Calvin Klein said, you know, like everything is a theory. Sorry, Francisco, I swear.
He's right.
Um, so,
Everything is a
so
theory. The idea that the
mhm,
Big Bang was brought about by God is a theory. It is a theory that is used
this is true.
to explain something that is not understood.
This is true. This is true.
It is a theory, it is not a
Um,
proof. It is a theory and an assumption, unless you have more evidence that can prove it. If you have more evidence that can prove that God brought about the Big Bang, go ahead and present it. Other than that, I
I
am
do.
going to
I
assume the basically that I just don't know.
So I do have that, but we don't have enough time to discuss that. We really don't. I'm not gonna lie. So if I go to the paper that I wrote on this,
how about we
uh,
just hit some highlights? How about you do that? How about you hit some highlights of the paper?
highlight the argument.
Like just the most important parts of the paper, hit those. So that way we don't waste too much time.
All right. All right. So did you want me to start with the first one?
How many papers are there?
Oh, I'm sorry. So say that. Oh, so just make the highlight of the paper.
Yeah, so just hit the major points. Don't read the whole.
Um. All right. for the layman, everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause.
right?
Um, hold on,
We
if you
don't know
give me
what that
one moment.
causes.
Hold on, if you give me one moment. Uh, there we go. All right. Sorry about that. Let me just place this there now, which I can't do so. Mhm. All right, give me one moment. I have to figure out if this is it. Yep. All right. So here we go. So this is essentially it. Not Leibniz. I swear. Yeah, so whatever begins to exist has a cause for its existence. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause for its existence. Uh, Defense for the first point is simply, nothing. Something cannot come from nothing, and there's mathematical principles to back that up, but I'm not going to do that. Second one is that the universe came into existence, which is the Big Bang, which therefore leads to a logical deduction that there was a cause, but that does not necessarily mean that it was God. So, excuse me, sorry about that. So, what this guy says, which is William Lane Craig, he says, can the universe be self-caused? Because the prominent atheist philosopher Daniel Dennett actually agrees that the universe has a cause for its beginning, but he thinks that the cause of the universe's beginning is itself, and he really is serious. What he calls the ultimate bootstrapping trick. He claims that the universe created itself. Dennett's view is nonsense. Notice he's not saying that the universe just came into nothing. He's saying that the universe brought about itself into being, but this is impossible. In order for the universe to create itself, the universe would have had to existed, logically incoherent. Then it's talking about the many worlds hypothesis and saying why um, it's not correct. And essentially, it's saying so there's a lot that goes into this. Did you want to take the time to talk about it?
I think that um, I think that obviously it is
Because
basically the explanation that is being made with the cause of the universe, God causing the Big Bang, is that so basically the problem is that nothing you can't create something from nothing.
yeah,
Matter can't be created from nothing. So the idea is that there's some higher power that can create something from nothing, and that's what happened,
yeah,
which is an assumption.
true,
We don't know what that something came from. The assumption is made that that something came from nothing, and that
true.
there was a higher power that turned nothing into something.
Yep,
But at this point, we are
essentially.
still at a point where that is an assumption, a theory that is used to explain an unknown and not a proof. We don't know what caused that something to come about. We don't know if there was even nothing before.
I
The end of
really
this
disagree.
argument, it all comes down to a belief, really. A belief or an
N-
assumption.
Not yes and no. Yes, the assumption, but no because you don't know enough. Um, so we're just gonna go ahead and skip this. So we're just gonna go to the next one. Um, so the next one, okay, is two. I believe that God is the best explanation for the fine tuning of the universe for advanced biological intelligent life. Earth is in just the right place, in just the right system, in just the right cluster, in just the right place, in just the right Milky Way galaxy, and just the right galaxy in just the right position away and close enough to other galaxies just at the right time in the history of the universe to observe the wonders of the nebula and the beauty from what we call the heavens. The probability of that, as astrophysicist Dr. Hugh Ross puts it, as being a chance to 1 out of 10 to the power of 282 to the power of 33. That is tens per
I'm sorry, I
power.
have to interject there. The probability based off of what? The universe is so vast
You're
that
making me
scientists
grab
can't
all
even.
my
No, I'm
books.
serious. The scientists don't even. Scientists can only see into a small portion of the universe. That's how vast the universe is, right?
True.
So if the universe is so vast that we can't even see most of it, like literally billions and billions of light years wide, I would imagine that it would be very likely for a spot like that to exist. And not only would it be likely for a spot like that to exist, but it would also be likely for that spot to exist in multiple locations. And the universe is too vast and beyond our knowledge to calculate that sort of probability. So I am going to say that that probability was more than likely calculated based off of an assumption made at some point.
The assumption meaning as far as we can see to the event horizon.
Right. And I am
Yeah.
saying that the event horizon is billions of times smaller than the entire universe itself.
But when you say that, then the calculation only increases in the probability of how many to one.
Not
You
really.
know what I mean?
You take
I
that
would say
probability, you take that probability and you multiply it by assuming that that probability our in our perception in our area, you take that probability and you multiply it by the billions of other areas that exist of the same size, and that probability increases exponentially.
okay. Well, I'm just that I can understand. I just don't think that
Let's say
you.
that the probability was correct. Let's say the probability that you gave was correct. It was proven it was
Okay.
correct. Okay. At
It
that point,
was
we are still assuming that God caused that probability to come about.
Mhm.
It's still an assumption. Now, here's another thing too: is um, the lottery. There's a 1 in billion something chance of winning the lottery, right?
Mhm.
So if somebody wins the lottery and billions of people play, did that person win the lottery because of chance?
Mhm. Okay, I see what you're
Theoretically
saying.
speaking, theoretically speaking, billions of people played and they won the lottery by chance, right?
Mhm.
Did somebody else make them win the lottery?
I would say not.
Okay, now, if you take the billions of locations in the universe that a planet like Earth exists, if it would make sense for somebody to win the lottery with that small of a chance, wouldn't it make sense for a place like Earth to exist? Of all the planets that participate in
Mhm.
being a location where life can exist, it would make sense for one to pop up somewhere to meet that probability.
You don't know enough, man. I'm sorry. You really don't. Let's just continue to the next
Well,
one.
give me
No
the
offense.
knowledge then. Give me the knowledge
I
then if I don't know enough.
we don't know. I know.
Because I have not been presented anything that evident I have not the only things that I have been presented are evidence that lead to an assumption.
Okay, so first off, the first argument, the Kalam cosmological argument, everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. That's incredibly more complex than that. That's for people who don't understand the actual argument. You got to literally dumb it down because it's so complex. The second one, which is God's best explanation for the fine tuning of the universe, that's in two parts. First part, it comes to a lot of factors, especially to the hold on, hold on, I gotta figure it out. Let's see. It comes to the part in where are you, baby? Um, table of contents. There we go. View, document outline. Fine tuning argument. Um, yeah, there's a lot like da, 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 da. So where does he get this one from? Because there's a footnote in it. Uh, um, 33, which is, oh, I have that book. I have that book. It's somewhere. I don't want to look for it. So he calculates it based on like the space, he calculates it on the space of where we're at in the galaxy, no, in the system compared to where we're at in the galaxy, compared to where we're at in the cluster, and it keeps going. And then on top of that, you calculate it on how far we are. We would calculate in time from the 14 billion years in the past, which we can see evolved to where we are now. And so it has multiple other things. I wish I can tell you. I can send you a video, and the guy explains everything essentially, like the entire argument, and I could just show you that video. Uh, he just simply sums it up. Let's see. So what I have, so the actual argument for it. So let me just finish what this paper says, right? The simplified one.
I have one
Uh,
question that really
yeah.
questions the validity of any of the statistics that this man or whatever has come up with, and that is, where would he get the computational power to calculate any of these probabilities?
Computer.
What kind of computer? Like a NASA supercomputer?
IBM computer.
Do you think that a NASA supercomputer has enough processing power to calculate the probability of a planet like ours existing here based on the entire section of the universe that we can see into using technology? And it's pretty far.
Yeah, they do it all the time.
You think so?
Technology. Yeah,
Don't you
technology was
think that if the NASA supercomputer was that advanced, that we'd be a little more successful in our space exploration?
super Google. Sorry. I'm sorry. I really am sorry. Please continue. I didn't hear the last thing you said.
I'm saying that I don't think there is any. I think that the portion of the universe that we can see into using telescopes and stuff like that, and lasers and all that, is much larger than any existing computer on Earth can even calculate any sort of mathematical problem on.
That's just
Even if you take one
that's not
dimension, right? You have to keep in mind that this goes in an infinite number of directions.
mhm. But we do have computers that calculate it. NASA has it better, obviously. China does it the
How
best.
accurate are those though? Because that's literally, there has to be some sort of cut somewhere.
Um, Shoot. Why didn't you catch me a year ago? I memorized all this. I'm not gonna lie. I memorized all of it, but I had no use for it, so I lost it. Yeah, it's like use it or lose it when it comes to muscle memory. I had that in my
But
brain, but
here's the real question, okay?
mhm.
Let's assume that the probability of, 1 in a million something being, you know, being a spot where life can exist,
Mhm.
wouldn't it make sense to say that one out of that certain number, statistically speaking, should exist because of the probability? For instance, let's take an example. Let's say you have a die, right? Simple
Okay,
mathematics. I think we can have a conversation about simple mathematics, right?
yeah,
Simple probability. You have a die, right?
mhm.
Cited
Yes,
1 through 6, right?
mhm.
Let's say you have 6 die,
Okay,
right? All 6 die are cited 1 through 6.
mhm.
There is a 1/6 chance that a specific die will land on the number 1, right?
Mhm.
So if you roll all 6 dice, it would make sense that at least one of those dice would land on the number 1.
Sure.
Now, what was the probability you said for life existing in a specific spot? 1 in something to the something power?
Um,
Now let me ask you something. There are an infinite number of locations in the universe, right?
sure.
Distance when it comes to distance, there are an infinite number of locations on a line.
Uh-huh.
And when you take a 2D plane, it becomes exponentially greater. It's like infinity squared, right?
Okay.
Number of locations on a plane. Now, if you take, 2 to the something, or a million to the something power, number of locations, if the probability of life existing on one of those locations is 1 out of something power, if you take that denominator and you take that number of locations in the universe, wouldn't it make sense that one of those locations would host life? Because the probability is that 1 out of that many locations would do it.
Yeah, but there's a difference between probability and practicality.
It's the same
Like,
concept. It's
I mean,
practical that if you roll it's practical that if you roll 6 die, one of them will land on the number 1. How high
we're not
that number
talking.
goes, how high that number goes does not change. The probability literally spells out what is going to result if you take that group.
I
So
mean,
like
I'm not willing to bet my life on it. I mean, that's
say
how
you
much I
have
don't trust it.
say you have a 100-sided die, right? So you have a die
Okay.
that has the numbers 1 through 100 on it.
Yep, I have
Say
one.
you take the chance of that die landing on the number 1 is 1 out of 100, right?
Yep.
So let's say you take 100 of those die and you roll them
Okay.
all.
Okay.
Then it is more than likely that at least one of those die will land on the number 1, right?
Yes. So,
Because you're
when
rolling
it
100 of
comes,
them.
so what we're more concerned about is with respect to the with the existence of, like intelligent
Does
life on
Let
where
me
it
ask
is on a ga-.
you, if there is a probability 1 in 100 that if you roll 100-sided die, if there is a 1 in 100 chance that one of them will land on the number 1, does it take a higher power for one of those to land on the number 1? Or does it simply
Okay,
take a matter of chance?
okay, I see. So I think you're kind of, okay, I don't think you're understanding entirely. So it's not the fact that you're rolling a
I am
hundred,
saying
a
that
hundred.
probability is not proof of a higher power. It's
mm,
evidence.
I, I know, but use the evidence for the proof. But look, it's not the fact that you're no, not you. It's not the fact that we're rolling a hundred-sided dice to get one of them to say one, but it's more accurately, it's like those slot machines that you slot and then you have to get three matching colors,
Right?
right? So imagine 250 of those. So no, imagine 150 of those. Okay, you do one, you scroll one of them down. All of them get the
Let me
exact
ask you
same
something.
match, and you have to do
Let me
that
put
10
it
times.
into a better perception, right?
Okay.
What is the possibility of getting all 3 things on that slot machine the same? Pick any number
Shoot,
you want.
yeah, I forgot.
It depends on how many symbols are on it, right?
Yeah.
Let's say there's 5 of them, right? 5 times
All right.
5 times 5. That's 125. That is 1 out of 125 chance of getting all 3 symbols the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's assuming we pick one of them. You got to keep in mind that there's 5 different symbols that could all be the same. But we're going to keep it simple and say that there's a 1 in 125 chance. Let's choose the symbol 7, right? There's a 1 in
Okay.
125 chance that all 3 of them will land on 7.
Okay.
Now, if we take 125 slot machines and we run each of them, it would make sense that one of them would land all 3 of them on 7, right?
Yes.
Same concept. It is 1 in a million to something power chance that a location would exist in the universe that could host life. Now, if we take a million to the something power different locations in the universe, then it would make sense that one of those locations would host life.
But I think it just leads me back to probability versus practicality. Like no one's gonna bet their life on it. Like so, I understand what you're saying that there is a possibility. There has to be a possibility, logically speaking, because it's one out of a number. It's
Right.
one out of
What I'm
X.
saying, what I'm saying is that probability or even practicality, right, does not prove anything. It's normal for
Yeah.
a
So
probability to be practical.
I'm not saying it does. This is only a part of the argument. As I
If
said,
you
this is a
if you
simplified.
roll if you roll two six-sided die, it is both probable and practical that you will roll the number 7.
Mhm.
Two dice, right? Two dice that are both 1 through 6. It is both probable
Yeah.
and practical that it'll land on the number 7, right? If it
Spoiler.
lands on,
You see what
oh
he
God.
posted?
All right, we should just base our assumptions off of a movie now.
I know. Thanos.
So
Thanos created everything. Where this
let me
universe,
ask you
he.
something. If what you're suggesting is that because something that was so slim of a chance happened, that it's evidence that a higher power exists.
No.
If I take two six-sided die, you know what I would believe? This is what would make me believe that a higher power existed, okay? If something that was impossible happened, right? For example, impossible, impractical.
Mhm.
I take two six-sided die, I roll them, and I land a 13. Exactly. That would change my mind about some things.
Not
However,
the first.
if I took, it's impossible, right? It's impossible to roll 13 on two six-sided die
Yeah.
unless
Because,
they're not normal dice.
yeah. I mean, I swear,
Now,
Francisco.
oh, is these some more spoilers?
Yeah. He's saying that this is that Thanos won Endgame and we're the universe that came after. So Thanos is God.
I'm weak.
I know. Oh my God.
So
You were
now
saying?
it is impossible and impractical that if I roll two six-sided die that I will add a 13. Now, if I roll two six-sided die and I roll a 12 or a 2, those are the two least likely positions to roll. That doesn't prove the existence of a higher power.
Nope.
That doesn't prove the existence of anything. That doesn't prove anything.
Nope.
I just got lucky.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Now, if I roll two die, let's just say it existed for some reason. Let's just say I
Okay.
rolled two die that had 10 to the something power, or a million to the something power sides. And I
Okay.
rolled a 2, a 1 and a
Okay.
1. That still doesn't prove anything. That's luck.
Granted.
The result of a probability, as science would explain it, is luck. It's probability based. It's
Mhm.
chance.
Mhm.
But of course, there are, advanced physics and quantum mechanics that would cause a die to land a certain way, based on how it leaves your hand and stuff. But
Okay.
on a simple level, it's luck.
Yeah. On classical mechanics, it's luck.
I'm just saying that, if you understood quantum mechanics enough, you could probably force a dice to land the way you wanted it to.
Mm,
You could train your hand. You could train your hand to the laws of mechanics and physics to land the dice. Because
this guy.
if the dice falls at a certain velocity, angle, rotational speed, everything, you can calculate where the dice is going to land just based on physics and gravity and all that.
Oh, wow.
But but
Yeah.
I don't think
All
anybody
right.
can hear.
So yeah.
That's not even
what happened?
I said that's not even relevant.
Yeah, it's all good, man.
I'm
So
just
yeah,
saying it's technically chance, but it's technically not chance. But for this scenario, we're gonna say it's chance.
yeah. Where was I? The probability of that, as astrophysicist Dr. Hugh Ross puts it, as being a chance of 1 out of 10 to the power of 282 to the power of 33. That is 10 to the power of 282 times itself 33 times. To call these numbers
You can multiply the powers together. 10 to the what
what?
power? 10 to the what
Uh
power?
10 to the 282
Wait a
power.
second. Shit, I went to open my calculator and open my calendar.
Oh my God.
Don't act like you've
I,
never done it.
I've done it sometimes.
All right, so what are the numbers again? 10 to the what?
Uh, Hold on. 10 to the, why don't I just highlight it? 10 to the power of 282
Times?
to the
Or
power
how
of
many?
to the power of 33.
So that's a 1 with 9,000 zeros after it. That's not as big as they make that number sound to be. It also makes up for a small portion of the universe.
Probably.
So it would make sense for a location like the Earth to exist in multiple places throughout the universe based on that probability, and actually kind of goes against the theory of it proving a higher power.
I wouldn't say that. Now, where are you getting that from? If you wouldn't mind me asking.
Well, the 9,000 zeros. Are you asking where I'm getting that from? Simple
No, I mean
mathematics.
mathematics, but what you're saying has to be relative to some other information, like like you're saying simple mathematics is mathematics, but you're using mathematics
So
to show or something.
let me ask you something. A to the x power, or my bad, x to the a power to the b power is the same as x to the ab power, right? You multiply the powers together.
I think so, right?
Either way, you're gonna multiply it. You're gonna keep multiplying it by itself. Once you're done multiplying it by itself the first time, you're just gonna keep multiplying it by itself. So you might as well just multiply them together.
All right. All right. So to call these numbers astronomical would be a literal drastic and understatement. So third point, I believe that God is the best explanation of objective moral values. If God does not exist, then objective moral yeah, I know. If God does not
No,
exist, then
I was
objective
laughing at the
moral values,
comment.
huh?
I was laughing at the comment. He said, "I'm gonna train myself to win the lottery."
Oh
Because
my God.
remember I was talking about how you could probably train your hand to like roll a dice the way
Yeah,
you wanted to if you knew enough physics.
yeah. He's over here like I'm training myself to
It
win
would
the
have to be
lottery.
so precise though. Like it would have to be
Oh.
astronomically precise.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Where
we're
was I?
I I think we're gonna need to wrap this up because it is way past my bedtime.
Yeah. Let's see. I believe that God is the best explanation of objective moral values.
Okay.
If God does not exist, then objective moral values do not exist, but they do exist, therefore God exists. One may say that sociobiological moral values produced by evolution is objective, but just like how instinct of the fear of heights, snakes, and the dark keeps us cautious and thus more likely to live, but that is just evolution and makes those moral values preferable and socially advantageous, not objective in the sense similar to instinct. Thus, it is subjective, and if you say that it is bad for me to rape because you believe it's bad, and you're forcing your opinions on me, and I will have the right to defend my personal subjective morality against your impending ones. But objective moral values do exist, so it is on that basis why rape is condemned. Thank you, Raul, for what? Okay, continuing on. Um, 4. Uh, I believe that God is the best explanation concerning the historical facts pertaining to the life, ministry, death, and resurrection of Jesus, who's called Christ. There are 3 facts that are accepted by the majority of all scholars, believers, and skeptics alike. A. Jesus had a ministry of preaching, suffered under Pontius Pilate, and was flogged and crucified under him. This is attested by Jewish sources outside the Bible.
I'm listening.
I was reading what he said. Sorry. Let's see. There are 3 facts that are accepted by the majority of all scholars, believers, and skeptics alike. A. Jesus had a ministry of preaching, suffered under Pontius Pilate, and was flogged and crucified under him. This is attested by Jewish sources outside the Bible. B. The evidence of the empty tomb. If the early Christians began proclaiming good news, Jesus has risen, repent and find love and hope in the name of Jesus Christ, and the tomb was empty, then the Jewish leaders would have said, nah, brah, the body's still there. Check it out. But they didn't say that. They conceded the empty tomb and said the disciples stole the body. C. The disciples of Jesus believed that they had encountered the risen Jesus, so much in fact that they were willing to have their skins flayed, to be beaten, starved, hated, whipped, burnt alive, and ultimately live a life of suffering until martyrdom for a claim they would not recant that they saw Jesus risen from the dead, as he said, as he would rise beforehand. 5. Finally, I contend that a God is a personal God and that he himself can be personally known and experienced. Whole attention on arguments for God could distract us from God himself. Therefore, I contend that if you are seeking God in earnesty, then God will make his presence known to you one way or another. Scripture tells us that if you draw near to God, then God will draw near to you. Thank you. And that's essentially where are the hearts coming from? Oh, okay. You're welcome, Fernando. So yeah, so that's essentially what it is. If you want, I have a 32 page,
I'm not gonna read
37.
it.
No, I thought you said you wanted to educate yourself.
I don't want to read 37 pages of Raul.
How about we meet up and I will read it to you like a bedtime story.
I suppose, whatever.
Yeah. Because the Kalam cosmological argument is very complex. Would you like to hear just the premises and the conclusion of it, not even
I want
defending?
to go to bed.
All right. Well, I'll leave you to that then, my friend. Thank you. Oh my God, that's a lot of stuff. I don't know where that's coming from.
I know I should
So,
spam it too.
I don't even know where that's from. So yeah, thank you guys for coming. Do appreciate it. Anyone who watched, it was an incredibly long, much longer than I was anticipating discussion, but I think it was,
You're welcome.
but I think it was, yeah, but I think it was beneficial for both parties and for the viewers. So I'm glad that we made a contribution in not only each other's lives, but your lives as well. So, hey, we can only spam heart to you too. So yeah, you know, I'm glad that I hope all of you enjoyed. God bless you all. May the Lord be with you. May his face shine upon you. I'm falling asleep. He's falling asleep. I'm sure you're falling asleep unless you're partying. Have a good night. Peace be with you. And peace.